It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy Anako is here. Alex Lindsay's here and filling in for Jason Snell, the one and only Mikah Sargent. Is Apple about to do a foldable iPhone? We'll talk about the rumors and what Apple should and should not do if it does make such a thing. We'll dance around crowing because we didn't get hit by the CrowdStrike bug. None of the Mac people did. We'll explain why. And why it's unlikely we ever will. Apple gets 72 Emmy Award nominations, a new record. And maybe you've seen the ad. Apple's trying to encourage you not to use Chrome, but to use Safari. And they've done a takeoff on the birds. It's pretty wild. All of that and more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 931, recorded Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. Piledriving. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest Apple news with a fabulous panel of Apple News experts. Alex Lindsay from OfficeHours.Global is in the house. Well, his house.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Very, very well. Very, very well. Andy Anako's in the library from WGBH, Boston.
Yes, because there's construction crews in my neighborhood and they wouldn't let me play with their pile driver. So I said, well, if that's going to be your attitude, I'll just go to the library today. Thank you very much.
When you live by the seashore, there's a lot of pile driving to be done.
It's a scene, man. It's we're
going to need a bigger pile. We're going to need a bigger pile.
Yeah.
I presume what they're driving is piles. Of what? We don't know.
No, what they're doing is that there is a channel like in the neighborhood that connects like the harbor to like a little inland lake. One of the walls, retaining walls, is 100 years old, is starting to like crumble a little bit. So what they're doing is I guess they want to replace and upgrade that wall so it doesn't fall into the sea, but that's going to involve draining it so they can get at the foundations.
Wow.
So they're basically driving in all of it. If you can imagine, like, a strip of staples. Before you put it in the stapler, that only like a single sheet of like bent, rusty like iron, and they've got a pile driver that's just banging it in a line so they can make this wall so they can dry things out. I mean, if they left it there, it would look like one of them fancy, like I forget who's that sculptor who makes these massive like rusty steel wall sculptures that when a museum buys one, they actually have to like have it installed and then build the museum around it. So I'm looking forward to tourists this weekend, if it's still in place, saying, oh, I know you came here to see the Geary Wall. Okay. It costs $11.2 million. We're not going to have education for the next 2 years, but I think that the cultural drive that it brings to us is going to be worth it.
Keith Murdoch in our Discord says, is it Richard Serra?
Yes, Richard Serra. That's the name I was looking for.
We have a smart
those massive like curved like sheets of steel where again where it literally is like every time you read like about like an installation, it literally is like they order a piece and then they have it delivered and then they build around it because there is no way to get it. You think it was hard getting like a sectional sofa up 2 flights of stairs to your apartment. Wait till you get like a 40-ton sheet of steel that's supposed to be freestanding and not go over and kill people. It's really cool.
Also with us, Jason Snell has the day off. Mr. Mikah Sargent, I made him do double duty. Just finished 2 iOS Todays with Rosemary Orchard. Hi, Mikah.
Hello there, Leo. Hello,
You're
Alex.
wearing
Hello, Andy.
your barbershop quartet shirt. Or do you want to sing?
You
can sing today. We shall sing. You might need to sing because there isn't a whole lot of news. The top story on Tech Meme is a rumor, but I'm going with it, that the Apple will do a foldable iPhone, not next year, but the year after. And it will be like the Galaxy Flip. It'll be a top-down foldable, not an open book foldable. Yeah. This is from Digitimes.
Yeah, they're quoting a story that was broken by The Information this morning, and we've been looking at reviews about a folding iPhone for a long time now. So this is not necessarily new. What's new is that they're reporting that actually now there's like an internal code name for it, which suggests that it's not just something they're playing with or working on. It's this is a sign they're actually putting it into production because they need that formal sort of infrastructure to start like actually putting out bids for screens, putting out bids for components, and scheduling manufacturing.
I like this idea.
So we could be seeing one in a couple of years. Yeah.
It's my favorite folding phone is the Galaxy Flip, not the Fold, because it flips open, and so it's just, so essentially what you're going to get is an iPhone folded in half. Halfway.
You know what? I love the idea of the Galaxy Fold. I love the idea of a phone that folds out into an iPad Mini. But Apple is all about product design. Okay, and they're all the things that they could do with a folding phone. The idea of a form that is almost like an Apple Watch when it's folded, because it'll have an external screen and external cameras. But when you open it up, it becomes just a basic, just a standard iPhone. I really looking forward to seeing what they could do with that. Motorola has done amazing things with design there. Samsung has done amazing things. Oppo, pretty much everyone who's done something with this has found a twist to put on it. So it's super exciting to think about what Apple would do about it. Also, although I would love to have again an iPhone that folds out into an iPad Mini, I would much rather have an iPad Mini and aside from a regular phone. So at least this indicates that maybe that doesn't mean that Apple is not updating the iPad Mini because they know they're going to be getting rid of it with this new folding tablet-size iPhone. So because this rumor is saying that no, it's going to be a really, really teensy compact little Apple Watch Maximus that turns into an iPhone instead of an iPhone that turns into an iPad.
Let's give the information credit, because this comes from Wayne Ma and Chianer Liu, who work for the information, as well as Digitimes, I guess. They also point out Apple is known to cancel products late in their development, so no guarantee. But apparently they are working on it, and they've given it a name and all of that, or a number.
I still just feel like, I think Apple did the right thing by waiting for a little while. I saw a Flip. A friend of mine has a Flip, and the coolest thing about it was, hanging up is snapping it shut.
Yeah.
You gotta
be careful. You can't be too aggressive.
I know, but that I was like, okay, I like that. But the problem is I could immediately see the fold, and that would drive me absolutely crazy. Like, just to have a fold and have this little lighter little part in the middle. Yeah. I was like, I don't think I can do that. So it'll be interesting to see. I do like the idea that it's closed and it's smaller and everything else, but I already have mine in a case and I have a thing. And I just was like, I don't know. It's the problem. I just haven't seen any of them that fold doesn't become something you can see all the time.
I have the Flip 5 and I really like it. I had the Fold, one of the first folds, because I really wanted to see what these foldable screens would do. And I agree with you. The crease is noticeable. But more than that, what bugs me more than that is the texture of a foldable screen. Is we're used to this nice glass.
Yeah.
And I don't put a screen cover on my phone, so maybe other people are. But the way Samsung does it, it's actually there's a protective layer on top, which you could peel off. Yeah. I did on my Fold, and that was a mistake. So you leave that on, but it feels a little bit almost like grabs your fingers, almost like it's rubber a little bit. It's not a pleasant.
Well, the newest, I finally got a chance to get my hands on the new Samsungs. They've really come a long way. It really does. At least the Fold, I didn't get to get my hands on the Flip, but the Fold, it really feels as though this is the fourth or fifth generation of a new platform. It feels like a regular phone. There is a kind of a crease, but you kind of have to look for it. And I'm convinced that Apple wouldn't put this into production if they didn't feel as though they either had a way of mitigating that via a better hinge design, or B, they're just going to make it so compelling overall that you're going to say, okay, so what if there's like a little crease that I might be able to notice? I'm just thinking about the idea of the number of times you take a phone out of your pocket to do one thing and then put it back in. Imagine having a half-sized iPhone where the screen is not just giving you the time and giving you a notification, but it can actually be an active widget where it says, oh, the thing that you wanted to do, here it is, press this button, action this, turn on the lights, and then put it back in your pocket. The idea of I'm losing my desire for an Apple Watch or a smartwatch, but I'm starting to get into the idea of like an Apple Pocket Watch. Again, something that is like large enough to give a better experience.
Only Andy and Nako would want an Apple Pocket Watch. Yeah. That's very handy.
I have yet to find this at all compelling in any sense other than it exists because novelty. Because here's my problem with it. When you fold it in half, it's thicker.
Ah.
And so now I've got this thick thing I have to store in a pocket. Or
Apple,
like, it's not as if
recognizes that. In fact, the Wayne Ma story in the information says Apple designers have previously mandated a foldable iPhone should be half as thin as the current iPhone model, so it won't be too thick when shut. So they agree with you.
it has to be. Otherwise, it just feels like
a wedge thing.
Remember when we used to have foldable? Let's do that again.
Yeah.
And the way that they've either you fold it in half and it looks like a cyborg hot dog, in which case I'm not trying to stick that in my pocket.
Let me lend you the Flip 5.
Show title.
Would you like to try it for a while? Just to see?
I'll try it.
Because here's why I like it. It is thicker. Not as thick as the Fold. The Fold's really thick, but it's thicker. But it's like a pocket square. It could fit. It fits like in your shirt pocket. It's very convenient form factor. And I think really, so I think there's two markets for foldables. One, people who want an iPad size screen on a phone, but that thing is really big if you play with it. And then the second one is, I think, a larger market. We'll see. I don't know. Samsung doesn't release figures, but I think a larger market for a pocket square. People who want to put it in their purses, or they just don't want. This is kind of a clunky thing to be carrying around, and I think it's very elegant. And if you could make it so, apparently, according to the information, the next generation iPhone, the 16. Which will not be foldable. Well, it will be, but only once. Is going to be so thin. In fact, they say the iPhone 16 models will also use a larger graphite sheet inside the chassis to address overheating issues. And they're going to make it extremely thin as a step toward the folding phone, which will be, thin when you unfold it. So I think there's a market for it. I want you to try it just to see. Because until you carry it around for a while.
Yeah, I can't know until.
Yeah, the form factor is good. I still agree with you. The screen and the crease and all that.
Yeah,
Apple's
I just
addressing the
think
crease
that
too, apparently.
The only way to gain access to what I really want to do seems to be a fold away. So why even put the fold in the way of me getting it?
This is the other thing. There's a screen on the outside of it.
Yeah, but can I do everything on there that I can do when it's unfolded?
But you can do a lot of things.
Yeah, but think about the thing you take a phone to do this one thing, like to check, hey, how far away is my Uber right now?
Yeah,
and
I can do that right now with this watch
notification
or with this phone.
Yeah,
I can look at my.
But look how big it is. Like even I love my phone, but I got to one of the things I got on Prime Day was a new pair of shorts, and I didn't know when I bought it, but it has actually a side pocket that's exactly the right size for a phone, and it's great, it's perfect, it's like such the natural place to put it. But the fact that there is such a need for trying to figure out what the hell to do with this big sheet of glass that we carry around everywhere, that they are manufacturing pants with phone cargo built into it. That indicates that maybe there is at least an opportunity for an option where let's have one that actually disappears in your pocket when you're not using it, when you're not needing it. And we haven't even talked about I'm so dazzled by the idea of a transforming object. The idea that when you want it to be a phone with a big screen device, it can be a phone with a big screen device. When you want it to be something that is like a little like easel, a little like a camera that's on your desk that has a camera, and you're doing like a quick chat with somebody, it is this simple gadget on your desk. When it really is just something you want to stand on your desk to just tell you what time it is or keep an eye on your schedule. It's that.
Look at this, Mikah. Look at this. It comes in green. What do you say?
Get it. Okay,
now what do you say?
Sold.
So see this screen on here? I mean, there really is, and there's one other thing you can do.
Apple Watch does that.
No. There's one other thing you're going to like that it can do.
Yeah, but you got to wear an Apple Watch. You don't get to.
This is really cool.
Wear like a really cool like Casio, like a Casio like this. Isn't this fun?
You want me to answer that honestly?
No. This screen like this, you can use, to do your TikToks.
Oh, but I can prop up my iPhone and do that.
No, but you don't need to prop it up. See, it stands up all by itself.
I think this is for people.
I don't know why I'm trying to sell it to you.
Toys growing up. This is for people who don't have an Apple Watch, which is fine. I'm not convinced that it's anything more than some sort of nostalgia novelty play.
I think I'm with Andy that I see all these things that I could do with it, and when I saw the Flip, I thought, oh, that looks really cool. But as soon as I see that crease, my mind went, no. Like I can't, like it'll bother every time I open it. Like I can't even deal with scratches. Like, so, so every time I open it, it would just be like, oh. Okay.
Two things stand in the way, according to Wayne Ma, again, the information of the foldable phone. Apple's engineers have struggled for years to overcome the technical challenges of building such a device, such as eliminating the crease that forms in the middle of the display after repeated folds. The company may have resolved the issue. We'll see. It's just hard. Like even for Apple, I just find like my mind cannot see how they will get rid of the crease to the level that I think I'm happy with it. Like I just can't. I can't get my head around that process.
No, I see that. I don't think that this is going to. I mean, we've had foldable phones for like 5 years now. If the public was going to be transformed into, we want this to be the default form factor for phones, it definitely would have happened, and Apple would have been on this like years earlier. But I think there's room for it within the portfolio of shapes and forms that computers exist in. I really don't. I respect your opinion, absolutely, but I don't think it's nostalgia. I don't think it's a trick phone. I think it is a form factor that has a lot of merit. That once we get a couple million out there, once we get an Apple fans who are buying it because they like Apple design and they start to embrace it, then we'll start to see exactly how good this thing can be. I got to say that I'm at this point, I'm way more optimistic about the future of a foldable iPhone than I am about the Vision Pro. The Vision Pro, to me, at least at this stage, seems like, okay, you built a 3D video viewer and virtual screen maker for $3,500 that runs iPad apps. Well done. I don't think that anybody has a real need for that unless you really like to be Gadget Joe, but I'm glad that you made it, and I'm glad that the people who have them enjoy it. So I think that we're on the opposite sides of that kind of argument. I like the idea of foldables.
I think the one thing that would drive it is if you suddenly see a lot of teenagers using flip phones. Like that's like Apple. Right. I think Apple's quite happy with its market share there, and it would probably keep on adjusting to maintain that market share.
Sure.
It certainly showed that you had the latest. Mine folds, yours doesn't. I've got the latest.
Yeah. But I mean, there's parts I like almost everything about the flip phone except for the crease. Like everything about it, the idea of being able to flip it, the putting it up. I mean, I've only seen 2 in person in the wild. And both times I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I opened it and saw the crease. And I was like, oh, man, crazy. But I think if you didn't care about the crease, I think that there are many, many features about that are great.
I really just love the idea of fitting the little thing into my pocket. The problem is I'm an iPhone guy, and every time I try Samsung or any Android, I go, yeah, but I want to stick with my iPhone. So that's why I think there's some interest in whether Apple can do this, even if they don't make it better. And if they do, I think I think the market's there for it.
Yes, and Apple does have a good track record where they're not going to do something unless they feel as though they can add something to the table. It's not that
because otherwise people just say, well, Samsung had that 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Again, there's not. It's not as though iPhone customers have been demanding, "Hey, Apple, when you're going to get off your butt and give us a folding phone?" They haven't been doing that. So if they were to put it out, I would be convinced that they've got some ideas on how to solve the things that they themselves don't like about existing flip phone and foldable phone designs, or they figured out a way that we can use our manufacturing to get it so that it's not a 100% premium over a standard phone. It's maybe a 20% premium. It wouldn't cost you more than the difference between an iPhone and an iPhone Pro, which would in itself be kind of amazing. The Motorola, we are seeing some inexpensive ones, but they really they work nicely, but they are kind of inexpensive looking phones. Again, it's easy to be misinterpreted when you say that a lot of the value that Apple brings is just simply their design philosophy and their commitment to having a really lovely object in your hand that you're going to be accessing several times a day. But that's a bona fide feature.
One data point Apple has, of course, is the failure of the Mini. Right? The Mini I still hear people say, "Oh, I really miss my Mini, want my Mini," but Apple discontinued it, presumably because of poor sales.
Yeah,
or not. Or poor profit margins. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's the difference between asking somebody in a poll saying, hey, if Apple made a more compact phone that had nearly all the features of a Pro, would you buy it? Oh, I'd be all over that. But then, great, here it is. I'm like, actually, I'm glad you made it. I'm going to recommend it to my friends. But yeah, I mean, the people, the thing is, people who are not being served get heard the most because the people who are happy have no reason to talk.
Right.
That's it. Which is perfectly reasonable and rational. I'm the person who's complaining about something that the iPhone doesn't do because I'm not happy with it. People who are happy with the way that an iPhone works generally are outnumber me on that particular issue by 1,000 to 1. However, they're not as vocal as I am because I've got something to talk about. So.
Maybe they've decided in their market research, people liked a tiny phone, but didn't want less screen real estate. So this way you get the best of both worlds, right? You get a phone that folds in half, so it is small, but you can get a bigger screen on it.
Think of it this way. What if they had, one of the things I like about the Pros is that you can get the larger and the smaller one, and they're largely the same phone with very few differences. Like what if Apple were to absolutely commit and say that we are going to make we're going to make this feel as though it's just another flavor of iPhone. You're not getting a lesser version of anything, because that might have been one of the things that threw people off. That an iPhone mini, the mini version of something, I can give you a cupcake or I can give you a mini cupcake. Which one do you want in your lunchbox? So there's not a positive connotation with it. But I think that it just proved that at least in the Apple market space, there just aren't enough people who are so excited about a mini that they would be giving up the extra real estate. They'd be giving up the features that they could get if they went into an iPhone Pro.
GPEG in our YouTube says, once you go big, it's hard to go back to a small screen.
Yeah.
And that's the market for a foldable. If you could solve my problem with it feeling like a rubber screen, and you could solve Micah's problem, or no, Alex's problem with a crease. I don't know what your problem is, Mikah. But anyway,
skepticism is my problem.
Skepticism. If you could solve all that, that might be the sweep. Anyway, I think it's reasonable for Apple to try. Does Apple do market research now? Remember, Steve Jobs famously said, we don't do market research.
No, they do market research. They're a $2 trillion company.
It's too big.
They know exactly. Well, also they have the access to some of the most powerful market research in the world. They have intimate access to knowledge about the people who buy the most expensive and fashionable and feature-rich premium phones in the world, which are their customers. So they know what happens when we give them more storage options versus fewer options. What happens when we give them a lot? What happens when we keep more phones on the price list that are 2 or 3 years old to give people a less expensive option? Do they go for them? Or is that something that we should only keep manufacturing because for other countries outside the United States? They do research. They know what they're doing. They don't go into the reason why they canceled the Apple Car was largely like, okay, we can't sell these. we'll take some deposits, but we can't sell these.
I've been using iPhone 18, the public beta, and my daughter, who is a Samsung user, texted me, "Congratulations on your new Android." And I had to tell her, no, I'm just using RCS now. And
I've just stopped shunning you.
Yes. Am I a green bubble now? What's going on that she thinks I'm on Android?
Or how she knew, yeah.
You're appearing as an RCS chat. And so Google Messages or Samsung Messages is going to identify you as like as just another RCS user.
So all in caps. Read and delivered.
Did you get an Android? Congratulations. No, it's RCS, honey. Sorry. She's the one holdout in the family, and she hates Apple. Probably get a job with the FTC in a few years.
Hates Apple for what they did to her papa.
Yeah, turned him into a mindless, drooling zombie, a sheeple.
Made him ashamed of him, made him a pariah, and he was never the same. When he was sent off the Apple campus for the last time.
You know what? She might have something to do with it.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
I could see she's that way. She's very loyal. How dare you kick my papa out of your events? I will never buy.
It's like every really good John Ford Western saying, Callahan's ran my family off their ranch. What they call progress, we called 30 days of suffering. Now it's time to pay them back.
Let's take a little break here for the Callahans, the Hatfields, and the McCoys to shake hands and make things up. It's great to have Mikah Sargent in the panel. You should be here more often, sitting in for Jason Snell. Thank you for doing this. Here. We appreciate it. You're probably exhausted. But
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, this is your third show of the day. I don't know how you do it.
Hanging in there. Just lots of water.
You young people, I tell you.
Youth, yes.
Yes. Andy Anatko, our gentleman scholar. And, of course, my personal consultant when it comes to building a home studio, Mr. Alex Lindsay. Are you going to mock me because I didn't get a sound devices mixer for my home studio?
No,
I might miss that noise feature. I don't know.
It's very addicting. If you have a very quiet room, it's not a problem. But if you don't have a quiet room, then it's
I do. Except I'm over it's in the attic, and it's over the garage. And when the garage door opens, it sounds like thunder.
It doesn't really fix that. It fixes things like fans and light.
Yeah,
fans.
You have an air conditioning running. Air conditioning running right now. You can't hear it. So which sound devices? I have the old USB Mix Pre, but
yeah, it's the Mix Pre 3.2 is the one that has the new. It's slightly newer one that has
float.
It does, although I rarely use the 32-bit float. But now I have the Scorpio as well, which I highly recommend.
What's the Scorpio? You never should have asked.
I'm not using it. I'm not using it for the show. I use it for shows.
Is it for sound devices?
It's the one on the bottom there on the stack on the
big one, the big sound Mix Pre.
It's a really nice. It's a really nice
Mix Pre 10, 11, 2.
Yeah. So the Mix Pre 3 is all you need. So for doing anything at home, all you need is a Mix Pre 3. That's what I have on my desk.
Doesn't need something.
I know it's a big mistake. Micah knows me very well.
The 10 is nice because it's got some analog outs and it's got a lot more I/O. And the 6 is nice because that's where you can start doing ambisonic. But the 3 is what we have.
So I only need 2 microphones. So the 3 is the smallest one. It has 3. You could do 3 microphones. I presume that's. Oh no, it's 2. Oh yeah, there's a third. Yeah, I see a third on the other side. What I don't like is the little mixing thing. So what I'm getting is the Rode.
Well, you can with that mixing, you can hook a USB controller with little faders onto the Mix Pre 3, and then you have little faders to go up and down.
Oh,
you can do that.
What is that? Control. What do I need?
Oh, there's lots of them. Like any like a Korg.
People make faders.
You can get these little.
See, because that's why I bought this, because it's pretty colors and lights.
Wow, that is pretty.
You can get ones with faders.
I like the pretty colors and lights. Actually, this has decent mic preamps, which is probably the most
busy box for older people.
It is. It's a busy box for old podcasters.
Beep boop, slider. View.
It also has a button called Big Bottom. And
the big bottom.
I want a big bottom.
About that.
Yeah. Big bottom. But it doesn't have. Well, maybe it does. I don't know. It might have.
It
has a
the noise assist and the preamps are pretty insane on the sound devices. There's a lot of other people that are trying, but none of them have gotten quite to that level yet.
I know. Everybody, you go to a TV or movie soundstage, they're all using sound devices to record.
They're pretty nifty.
What are you doing, Leo? Wrong answer.
Wrong answer. Well, let me just check the price on this.
Don't
sucker.
You should talk to me before you buy one. That's all.
Okay, I'm not. Okay, I'm stopping. Right now, I'm stopping. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching MacBreak Weekly. Our show today brought to you by a name that's very familiar to you. Actually, 2 names. You know Collide. We talked about Collide for several years now. And perhaps you also know the name 1Password. Maybe you've heard of them. Maybe you also knew that 1Password acquired Collide a few months ago. So now you got 2 things to make you more secure. So here's the question for you. Do your end users always work on company-owned devices using IT-approved apps and never on a network that is not fully secured? No, of course not. They're out at the coffee shop on their own phone and laptop. So how do you keep your company's data safe when it's sitting on all those unmanaged apps and devices? 1Password has put together the perfect answer to this question: extended access management. 1Password Extended Access Management is the first security solution that brings all those unmanaged devices, apps, identities under your control. Of course, it starts with 1Password assuring that every user credential is strong and protected. Every device is known and healthy. That's the collide part. And every app is visible. It solves problems traditional IAM and MDM just can't touch. One way to think of this is your company's security. Your company's network is like the quad of a college campus, right? Nice brick paths between the buildings. Those are all the company-owned devices, the IT-approved apps, the managed employee identities. And then on any quad, you'll see the dirt paths worn between buildings, the paths people actually use, the shortcuts through the grass that are actually the straightest line from point A to B. Those are, in this analogy, your unmanaged devices, your shadow IT apps, your non-employee identities like contractors. Most security tools really assume you're only going to use those happy brick paths. That's a lot of problems that are completely ignored because most people are on the shortcuts. 1Password Extended Access Management security for the way we work today. Available now to companies with Okta, because Collide started with Okta, but they're expanding later this year. They're going to support Google Workspace and Microsoft Entra. So if you use any of those solutions for authentication, you've got to find out about it. Check it out, 1password.com/MacBreak. That's the number 1, PASSWORD.com/MacBreak. This is a user-positive, a user-friendly solution users love, but you will love because it keeps your network secure. 1password.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for their support of MacBreak Weekly and my habit of buying mixers. This is one for you, Alex Lindsay. I like this, the magazine Reason. I read it from time to time. It's kind of a libertarian journal. I like to get the point of view from that side. Not a big fan of Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, but I thought his piece in Reason this week was very interesting. The DOJ's assault on Apple, he writes, will harm consumers.
I don't know where you've ever heard that before. I would never say anything like that.
He says, and you know what? He's got a clear grasp actually of what makes Apple special. He says, what makes Apple products so unique is their ease of use and consistency over time. Apple's goal is to deliver a seamless, integrated experience that users can rely on time after time without giving it a second thought. How does Apple do this? By carefully exercising the very control the Department of Justice is trying to punish.
Punish. Did I
say publish?
Yes.
Sorry, my brain's not working. As economist Alex Tabarrok, I'm again reading from Paul's piece, explains in Marginal Revolution, I guess that's a book, I don't know about it. He says, quote, Apple's promise to iPhone users is that it will be a gatekeeper. Gatekeeping is what allows Apple to promise greater security, privacy, usability, and reliability. Gatekeeping is Apple's brand promise. Gatekeeping is what the consumers are buying.
Isn't that why CrowdStrike's nonsense part of the reason why it didn't work against Mac
Oh, yeah,
OS?
we can, let's do a little victory dance. We didn't use, no blue screen.
CrowdStrike
No, you know, as I said on Ask the Tech Guys with you, Mikah, on Sunday, don't be too hasty. Just because you Linux and Apple people didn't get bit by this doesn't mean you will never get bit by something. CrowdStrike was only on, what's weird, 8.5 million Windows PCs, but it just happened to be the PCs that were used by, Delta Airlines. Poor Delta.
A lot of large organizations. Someone in our group, they're one of the largest or the largest mortgage company in the United States, and they had, on Thursday, they had lost, I think Thursday evening, they had lost 15,000 personal computers and 7,000 servers. And by 10 a.m. the next day, they were up. But
somebody had to go to each of those 15,000 PCs.
They put everybody into action, trained them on how to do it, sent everybody from computer to computer. They had, SVPs and, wandering around.
Well, it wasn't a very hard fix. You had to reboot into safe mode. You had to remove a file from a driver's CrowdStrike folder or file.
It's the kind of thing that would be hard to do on a Mac.
But did you
that
see
specific one would be hard to do on a Mac just because of the permission.
Do we even have a safe mode on the Mac? I don't even know.
Yeah, there's a 9 to 5 Mac had a couple of different articles.
This is what
about
I was talking about.
Yeah, a couple of different articles this week, basically explaining why this kind of thing would not happen, because Apple used to be vulnerable to this sort of overall problem, but they basically closed the door on the reason why a few years ago you could no longer use Kext kernel extensions is because they deprecated the entire thing and essentially said that the only thing that will ever have access to the kernel is our own internal software. And they also explained from the Mac point of view why at least they explained Microsoft's argument to the Wall Street Journal that it's not their fault, so to speak, or it's not Windows' fault. It's that they were approached by the European Commission in 2009 saying that, okay, you make a lot of money off of security and antivirus products for enterprise, but you will not allow competing products to have access to the kernel, which is required to create really, really good tools or options. How do you want to solve this? I don't think there was an actual lawsuit or anything like that. This was pre a lot of the EU laws that would make this kind of a more hostile sort of thing. They said, okay, fine. We will basically structure Windows in such a way that all competing services can have access to the kernel. And it's because a deployment of a buggy update to a security product was able to bork the kernel, which is the last thing you ever want to bork. So they're using this as an argument that, hey, it's not our fault, blame the European Commission. I think that you blame the company that is not supposed to put out a bad patch that borks basically every single Windows computer that requires an enterprise scale of antivirus and anti-hacking tools. However, that is a fair point. That is a problem that is not really possible, at least from this vector on Apple. And if the EU were to require Apple to say, hey, you introduced a bit of security that makes all Macs safe all across the globe, we are going to require you to weaken that. That would be a bad thing. Yes. That would be
we will be talking about this, of course, later today on Security Now in greater detail. Steve will explain what happened. Paul Thurrott had a piece echoing what you just said in the Wall Street Journal. CrowdStrike outage has roots in Microsoft's antitrust problems. It is true that can you not, though, install a kernel extension if you are willing to jump through hoops on a Mac? I believe you can. In
some ways, but when it comes to the security, so Apple introduced a number of low-level APIs that give developers the ability, like CrowdStrike, to access low-level parts of the system, but not to the extent that you can on a Windows machine. And so, yes, you can install certain kernel extensions, but not within the security portion of things at that low of a level.
Apple does have a kernel panic. I haven't seen one, though. You're right, in quite a while.
And I think the issue is that when you do anything at that kernel level, there are a couple things like ACE is a audio thing that you have to go into to install it. But you can't make any changes. You can't update it. It doesn't update automatically.
So there you go. Yeah.
They can't, you have to go back into that mode to update it again. So it's not, it is. And so you can't just automatically update millions of computers at one time. And, of course, the problem that Windows has in general is that it's designed to be administered by a central, an administrator that sends everything out. And Apple is much more around the individual, saying whether they want that or not. And while there are tools for, Jamf and others that will help you administer these things across, fleets, it's not nearly as seamless as Windows. And the advantage of that is if you can support a very, very large fleet in Windows. With administrators.
Maybe one of the reasons you don't see a lot of Apples in enterprise, that you see a lot of Windows machines in enterprise.
Yeah,
I think the reason you see a lot of Apple, a lot of Windows, is because it's seen as cheaper, but without calculating the cost of ownership, which Delta should calculate into their
lost a lot. Yeah, it cost Delta a lot to be using Windows. Yeah. Maybe use Linux. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Linux has a similar issue, to be honest with you.
If we're sifting through the ashes for good news from all this, a lot of people are a lot more aware of what keeps machines running and how close we all are to a tsunami, an Armageddon of technology. If one of these services does something that goes nonlinear,
Steve, go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and also by extension, the power of a company like Cloudflare, which a lot of people have never heard of. No,
CrowdStrike. You're talking about Cloudflare.
No,
okay, yeah.
I'm talking like a company. They don't realize that Cloudflare is essentially the middle person, the middle technology that keeps websites and services running. And if Cloudflare, for instance, were bought by a crazy billionaire who decided that we are going to decide that we are not going to provide Cloudflare services to content and services we don't like, that is an immense amount of power for a billionaire to have. So that's it. So that's.
I'm confused. How did you get from CrowdStrike to Cloudflare? I don't understand what you're saying.
No, I'm sorry. I'm saying that a lot of the stuff that our society now absolutely depends on in order to keep things running, literally to keep trains running, is based on individual corporations that have an immense amount of power to screw everything up. Okay. And
I don't think that's what you're seeing here. That's not what you're seeing here. This is not. I mean, as Microsoft pointed out, it's 8.5 million computers. It's not. It's just unfortunate that CrowdStrike was a very popular security tool in big enterprise. They were an advertiser here. I know exactly how they work. I've spent time with the CTO. The problem is they ran, as Adesink said in our Discord, they're running an interpreter in Ring 0, which is just, and I'm sure this is what Steve will talk about today. This is just a recipe for disaster. It's almost always interpreters that cause the problems. That's why Apple had problems with messages, because it has an interpreter that interprets images and videos and so forth, and to render them. And an interpreter is essentially a little code engine, and it can run code. And if it's fed the wrong code, it can cause big problems. And if it happens to be running in Ring 0 in protected memory, it can cause a crash. So it's a complicated situation. I don't think that it's a dominant company in the sense that they had more than 8.5 million customers.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'll just quickly try to restate what I'm saying. That wasn't the point I was trying to make. I'm saying that there's no way to shut down the highways. There's no way for a problem to shut down the entire United States highway system, or to cause all cars, or cause so many cars to suddenly stop working.
Yeah, monoculture. You don't like the monocultures.
I'm saying that people should understand that so much of we're so used to like a power grid where just you flip a switch and the lights simply turn on and off. They expect computers and digital infrastructure to work the same way, when there are so many things that there's so many important pieces of infrastructure that, as the saying goes, is relying on some independent open source coder from South Dakota continuing to update an open source Linux component that they are the only person who's actually updating it for the past 20 years. And if this one component, which is responsible for moving files from point A to point B anywhere on the internet, were to become compromised or to stop working, that would be a very, very bad day. I just want people to understand that the fragility of infrastructure is a very, very real thing, and that you should expect and hold the companies and individuals and organizations to task for actually keeping it working, but understand that the default state is chaos, and there's no way of improving that.
Well, and I think that the single point of failures are a problem at every level. I mean, the United States has dropped unexploded nukes out of planes by accident. Someone dropped a wrench in Arkansas, I think, and almost took out half the state. And there was one relay switch that went bad and took out, browned out New York, pretty quickly. So,
I thought it was a kid that hit the telephone pole with a stick. I thought that's what.
Which one in New York?
So yeah, in the 1965 blackout, which I remember because I'm that old. The lights went out exactly when a poor kid hit the telephone pole with a stick. And for a long time, he thought he caused the entire Northeast to go out. You're right. It was a transformer that blew. But
probably squirrels. Don't cover up for the squirrels. Don't apologize for the squirrels. They're responsible for a lot of this.
But I do think that the nature of the way that Apple builds up a lot of the products is something that makes it harder for that to happen systematically across many different groups.
I don't know if I give Apple credit, or it's just that they're not. in the same boat as Windows, right?
Maybe. It's just that, there's just very little that happens. And the part of it is there's this annoying thing that every time you want to install or change something, Apple's asking you for a password.
Good.
Password.
Yeah.
I need a password. That slows a lot of things down. When you're being constantly asked to personally, where there's not really any way to get around doing that, it makes it really hard for most of these things to work. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but man,
Yeah.
Exponentially more difficult to write something up for a Mac. And I do think to get back to the article, I think that the problem is that the DOJ is trying to do, I think what he brought out is the DOJ is trying to do something that people are not interested in. Like, 70% of the voters that didn't want the act that the DOJ is trying to push forward. So they're going to try to do it some other way, and they'll most likely lose because the legal challenges to still in the United States. I mean, European Union can do whatever it wants, but in the United States, you really have to prove that it's truly a monopoly, and then you have to prove that it changed its behavior when it became a monopoly. And Apple hasn't really changed its behavior since it started, or for the last 15 years. They do what they do, and you're allowed to keep doing what you're doing, even if you get to a certain status. It's using it or changing your behavior that becomes complicated. And that's a really hard, and the FTC has been mostly failing, so it's not like, and they're going to continue to fail while they continue to inadvertently fund massive Republican campaigns. So,
I am glad that at least we're taking a look at that way, at that policy of what constitutes antitrust, what constitutes control of a market. I'm not insisting that the current that Apple needs to be nailed against the wall, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the world is so different in 2024 than it was when this overall policy of what constitutes antitrust. Like, did consumers have to pay more for a service or a product because of this behavior? There are a lot of very simple litmus tests, both internationally and in the United States. It's at least appropriate for at least there to be a forum to discuss. Is that a limited point of view? Should we be concerned that, again, the technology world is filled with $2 trillion operators that can really absolutely control what happens and what doesn't happen on a platform? And is it appropriate? It might not be for a government to say, no, you can't buy more than you can't buy out this portion of things.
I think it's fine.
You can't deny opportunities to other people, and it at least has a conversation that maybe we should make an adjustment. And the answer might be no. Things are working great. We should not just change anything at all.
But the conversation needs to be a law.
Discuss policy, then make the law. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and so in years to come, maybe, and I do think that Apple, we keep on going back to teenagers. If the trajectory continues to what Apple's done in the teenage, the up to 18, they will have a monopoly like this. In this decade, they will be a monopoly because you can see it every year. You're seeing the Android sales dropping, and when you see 87% of kids under 18 using an iPhone, the chances of them leaving that iPhone is low.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's not happening yet, but you're seeing there's this bubble that's coming. So what I'm saying is when Apple when they have 80% of the market or 90% of the phone market, all of everything I've set up until now changes. Like it is a completely different math. I'm just saying that they're not there yet.
It might be a wait because I don't have it in front of me, but there was some sort of a market research study about switching, and they basically came to the conclusion that the iPhone's growth and its perpetuity is reliant upon iPhone users replacing their iPhones with iPhones, that switching from Android is not a particularly powerful growth area for the iPhone. Obviously, if someone's going to switch, what are they going to switch from? They're not going to switch from Nokia.
You could also argue that companies should not be allowed to do things like lock-in that kind of create a monopoly, right? I mean, Apple could build a monopoly by giving you strong incentive never to switch. Oh, wait a minute, maybe they did. And then so at what point do you intervene? Just because people don't, they love their iPhones, that's kind of the mark of a monopoly. Until the monopoly becomes predacious and then the government has to step in. I mean, companies become monopolies because people love what they're doing. So saying somebody loves their, saying people, 80% of people love their iPhone or whatever is meaningless when it comes to antitrust regulation. You have to keep a company from being predatory. That's the point.
What has to do with antitrust law that you really have to have control of the market, and Apple doesn't. It only has.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. So, you can make that argument, and if they do in court, we'll see what happens. I mean,
and they're not going to do better than that globally. It's always, we're talking about the U.S. market, where Andrew's going to have a hard time getting above that level. Yeah,
but I do think that there is people are buying an iPhone because of the way that the walled garden works, and they're making that choice. And if they don't like that, then they buy an Android, and so the thing is, and I think that the people who buy an iPhone and then expect it to operate like an Android are a very small percentage of the users of iPhones. I mean, they just want it to work. They like the fact that it works with everything around them. They want all the devices to talk to each other, and that's very hard to do securely if you don't own all the pieces, and so I think that that's the process there. And I do think though that Apple is going towards that, not because people are switching. It's because if 87% of kids under 18 don't switch ever and just stay with what they have, eventually they're going to be upgrading, and that's what you're going to see that's the future percentage. And so I'm not thinking that anybody's going to come from Android to an iPhone. I'm just saying that. If everyone just
if every child were given an iPhone at birth, by 2053 we'll all be iPhone users.
But I'm saying that right now they're choosing that.
I know.
So they're but I think that a lot of the features, when you see the features that are added that I just think are absurd, that are all in messages and all these other things. I mean, those are added because they're definitely have figured out how to cater to that market effectively. And we don't see it that much. You see it when you watch Apple TV Plus. Look at all the concerts that they're doing. I barely know who any of them are. Those are total. All of Apple TV Plus's music stuff is all focused on that age group. It's definitely calculated,
and that's fine. But there's certain areas that are very, very sketchy, I think, for Apple. And I think that messages is absolutely like the case study to look at. I mean, we have internal communications inside of Apple that was revealed in discovery in lawsuits about how they were discussing, hey, should we do something about iMessages for Android, or making Android messaging a little bit more compatible? And you have the top executives who are still running the company right now explicitly saying, we feel as though it'll only give people reasons to let their kids have an Android phone instead of an iPhone. Why would we give that up? And to the detriment of the experience for iPhone users, or having to have the least secure method of communications possible, a standard that is decades old, having to send somebody, being able to send a friend a photo from their gorgeous iPhoto library, and it looks like garbage on the other side. And they could have simply used RCS a long time ago, and they only did it when they were kind of forced to. Rumor has it by China basically saying that no, if you don't support RCS, you can't operate in our country. This is why regulations sometimes.
Again, I'm gonna say, if you can pass the law, then more power to you. But they're not going to be able to, because it's not a popular thing.
Well, China did.
I mean, no, I'm saying in the United States, it's gonna be hard because But the issue is that I don't really. I mean, I have friends that are on Android. I don't feel the pain. I just go, I can't send it. I know. I'm your friend.
I just want to say, I just want to acknowledge that I love your friendship.
I didn't want to call you out or anything, but Andy and I go back and forth. But I always have to remember that I have to go to my phone to talk to Andy because I'm like, oh yeah, I got to use the phone for that one, not all the other computers. And so they'll
put RCS in Sequoia, right?
Oh, I'm sure they will, but I'm just saying that I don't know if consumers really, I just don't know if Apple users really care that much. The vast majority of them, and I don't think that they sit there and go, oh, I really wish there weren't any green bubbles. I think they mostly just go, there's mostly a lot of pressure on. My mom is the only one.
People didn't want seatbelt laws either. I mean, it's not always, the consumers always don't know what's right.
But again, you still have to get to a point where it's a monopoly. Like for instance, Live Nation is a monopoly. And
I understand your argument. And we will see in court, if the judge says it's not a monopoly, then you're right. They'll throw it out. But let's wait and see. Because I don't know if that's an argument.
We would say everybody loves something. nobody loves Live Nation. Like the thing is that like, so Live Nation this is a perfect example of a monopoly where the venue doesn't like the venues don't like Live Nation, the artists don't like Live Nation, I think definitely consumers don't.
Yeah,
like
I understand.
Live Nation.
I think
also very self-hating.
The fundamental question really is monopoly or not. If Apple's doing what its customers want it to do, should they be prosecuted for antitrust if they're making their customers happy? Isn't that what Rand Paul's asking? Customers love Apple because Apple's doing what they want. And that's what the FTC doesn't want. And is that the question is, should customers' happiness override antitrust regulation? Remember, antitrust is to protect consumers, but also to protect innovation by making sure other companies can compete, et cetera.
Letter of the law versus spirit of the law.
I'm gonna dip the most careful little toe into politics because I think it is relevant. That's kind of
watch out because your toe can get bit off. I'm just telling you from personal experience.
if you ask a Democrat if democratic policies make them happy, do they want a democratic leader to change to other policies? They're going to say, no, we think that everything's great. We're very, very happy with our choice. We wish the entire world worked that way. And you have the same sort of reaction when you talk to someone of the Republican side. That doesn't necessarily mean that's best for the ecosystem in general.
That's right. That's my point.
So that's and Rand Paul, I will say that this is just to make sure we're smoothing things over. He's not one of my favorite politicians. He's one of only two people in Congress who voted against medical compensation for 9/11 first responders. However, I do agree that he makes a very, very rational and cogent argument in this piece, which is why I put it in the show doc.
That's why the magazine's called Reason.
Exactly. I don't agree with it, but I respect the argument, and it's very, very well constructed. I just think that there are bits and pieces where companies are going to absolutely want to do the right thing for the company, which makes sense. They're going to secondarily do what they think is the right thing for their customers. But if outside of that ecosystem, their decisions are causing some damage or causing other people to have a suboptimal or even bad experience, that's when at least government regulation should at least think about, is it appropriate for us to step in? That's all I'm saying.
Let's take a little break. You are watching MacBreak Weekly with Andy Anako, Alex Lindsay, and a very special guest, Mikah Sargent, host of Tech News Weekly, iOS Today, and Ask the Tech Guys, who is filling in for Jason Snell. Nice to have you. Thank you for doing this.
Hello. Good to be here.
You have, don't look now, but you have a giant scary bunny over your left shoulder. So,
yeah.
Is that a jackalope?
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, that thing with the big ears.
Mothra.
Ah, okay. Nothing to be scared of. It's just Mothra.
It's just Mothra.
No, it is Gamera that is friend to all children.
We actually, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but we use all of those monsters as our Wi-Fi names. So our current Wi-Fi network is called Mothra, actually. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you're here. We hope you will continue to watch the show as we transition away from the studio. We're making some changes at Twit, trying, frankly, to be part of the 21st century. When Twit was started early in the 21st century, we really built a TV station, right? But that's kind of an expensive proposition. We've slowly been modifying this, and soon we're going to all be coming out of our homes or libraries, as the case may be, as Micah's doing, as Alex is doing. Alex really is my inspiration for all this. What you do with office hours is remarkable. And I realized that's probably more what we should be doing. I'm beginning to think the idea of shows, you need to have shows for advertisers, because advertisers won't buy, oh yeah, we just go turn on the microphone 3 hours a day. They won't buy that.
And then let the magic happen.
They won't buy that. So we'll probably continue to do shows, discrete blobs of content. But increasingly, I'm thinking I love what you're doing, because what you're doing, Alex, is about community. It's not about a show per se or a topic. It's about community. You have topics, and and we have such a wonderful community. That's what I want to foster. So we're looking at this. Please bear with us. We're under construction. Things are happening. We think our last show in the studio will be August 8th, and everybody will be working from home after that. Alex, you're going to come in here and do the last twit in the studio, which is August 4th, for Vision Pro, which is so cool. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited.
You're still thinking about that. I'm not.
No, I'm planning to come up this Sunday just to test things,
just to try it out,
like where the camera should be, and we can talk about a couple things there, and then I'll come up the next Sunday.
And we're putting together a live panel for August 4th so that you have people to see in 3D. So that should be very
cool. I mean, we just did a test recently on a Q&A that I was working on, and it looks really cool.
Yeah.
so we're gonna have some fun.
I'm
with
pretty
it.
excited
really
about this whole process. You help us out when you join Club Twit. Now, right now, about less than 2% of our audience is a member. I would love to get that to. That doesn't have to be 100%, 5, 10%. It means, of course, if you can't afford $7 a month, or you live outside the U.S. and it's too complicated or whatever, that's fine. But if you can, and if you listen to the shows and you like the shows and you want to keep it going and you're interested by what we're about to do, we would love to have you in the club. It's a great community. You can hang out in the Discord with other Club Twit members. Because of the club, we are now using Restream to stream live versions of this show and all the shows we do to every platform. Thank you, club members. That's including YouTube, but also Twitch, hi twitch.tv watchers, x.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, Kick. So anywhere you're watching, you can watch us live. And if you are watching live, join the club. twit.tv/club twit. All the shows ad-free after the fact. We haven't figured out a way to do ad-free shows in the live stream. We would just have to play The Girl from Ipanema for a minute. And that doesn't, seems to me you'd probably rather have us do the live ad. Anyway, thank you to our Club Twit members for making this possible, this transition possible, for supporting us as we transition. Because as I mentioned, advertisers say, they go, but what's the show? What's the show? But there's no show. It's just we're gonna hang out. Yeah, but what's the show? What am I buying? I don't know. MacBreak Weekly continues. So I was driving up. I visited my dad down in Redwood City. I was driving up Highway 101, and I saw 4 or 5 of these billboards. Safari, a browser that's actually private. And I thought, why is Apple buying billboards to promote their built-in browser? I was very puzzled by this. Article in Forbes says Apple warns millions of iPhone users stop using Google Chrome. This is Zach Duffman writing for Forbes. This kind of surprises me. This is apparently an ad campaign going on worldwide. Remember that Google pays Apple many billions of dollars, maybe upwards of $20 billion a year, to be the default search on Safari. So what he's writing is the arrangement could be curtailed by monopoly investigations in both the U.S. and Europe. So Google is promoting Plan B. They have a 30% installed base across iPhone users. They'd like to get that to 50%. That's another 300 million users. Apple says, no, we want you to keep using Safari. It was a local campaign in the Bay Area around here, but it is now global. They don't mention Chrome, but they don't need to because it's really Safari or Chrome, and that's it, says Zach. What do you think, Andy?
Yeah, there's been a lot of this over the past month and a half, 2 months. There was a story about how, as you suggested, that if the Apple Google deal gets broken up by the antitrust proceedings, then Google's going to have a big problem on its hands where they're not going to be getting as much data as they need to from iPhone users. And so the way to solve that is to get people to switch over to Google Chrome on mobile and on desktop, which is one of the reasons why they've been doing a lot of promotion in the recent months about all the AI tools that are now baked into Chrome to make it more of an attractive platform. Whereas really the only thing that keeps Apple, I think, from absolutely letting loose the dogs of war against Google on privacy is basically saying, just as you say, they've got $23 billion a year that comes in from their relationship with Google. If that relationship were severed, now they're kind of free to go. There was famously in 2013, 2014, there was actually an internal slide deck in which Apple was basically, for internal communications, cued into Tim Cook, Eddie Q, everybody. Here is how we can basically leverage our the marketability of our commitment to privacy compared to Google. And slide after slide after slide, just timelines of immense transgressions that Google has made up to 2013, not including like the last 11 years, to basically invade people's privacy.
You will see at some point on the TV an Apple ad that doesn't mention Google and Chrome. That is takeoff on Hitchcock's The Birds, where
it's so funny.
Security cameras turn into birds that fly up and start watching you. And the implied threat. In fact, Microsoft did this too. Remember Google Man, Gmail Man? They did a whole thing about, and I've seen other companies do this. Google's looking at your email and stuff like that. But isn't Google forced to use WebKit? Why is Chrome less secure or less private than Safari? Is it?
It's just logged in. I don't think that it's less private in the sense that you can log in with your Google account and then you're using it that way. But you're right that as it stands in the United States, it is WebKit on the back end. That, of course, is different outside of the US, well, specifically in the EU, where they are allowed to use their own browser engines. And in that case, if you're logged in with your Google account, which it's funny.
That's the only way they could do it, though, right? I mean,
I keep
Apple's
prompts.
ATT protects you from Chrome doing anything else. But if you're logged in as a Google user, then what? Then does Chrome see everything you're browsing on?
Yeah.
Your activity, your searches and everything at that point. Yeah.
They get a lot more data. That was one of the arguments that Apple was making in that internal slide deck about how Google requires you to be logged in to your Google account to use each one of its individual services versus the other side of the table on Apple. Oh, no, you don't have to be logged in order to use Apple Maps. You don't have to be logged in. You can have different Apple ID accounts for different Apple services. So yeah, there's a lot of data to be collected from there.
A couple of days ago, Apple released a page on its webkit.org site. I mean, it's theoretically open, but we know it's Apple, right? Private Browsing 2.0. When we invented private browsing back in 2005 and tracking protection, Chrome, incidentally, today announced that they're going to not abandon third-party cookies. They've been trying to do this. And partly because of the EU and regulation. Their new technology that they were hoping to use that Steve Gibson looked at and said, this is far better privacy protection. The EU is
based
not
on cohorts.
It actually was the spy is your own browser in this Google technology that tracks your interests. And then there's a browser auction going on in your browser. It never hits the server in your browser to auction off ads. It's a really interesting technology that Steve says is very privacy forward. But Google's not going to abandon third-party cookies. They're stepping back. But honestly, when you're using Safari, you're always logged into Apple. Doesn't Apple do the same thing?
Kind of. Now, this is why this becomes not a collection of random events, but definitely a campaign inside Apple. It's not a coincidence that ad is going up. At the same time, they're doing this post to WebKit Private Browsing 2.0, triumphing about how we invented private browsing and we're making it even better with the newest updates to WebKit, and making this really, really funny, really, really well produced ad on YouTube about it.
Wild. Yeah.
It means that they really, really, really do want to hammer this as a key Apple advantage. And when you read through the Private Browsing 2.0 blog post, a lot of it is explaining the basic technologies of how its existing private browsing features work, why they're better than what you would find on unnamed other browsers, and things that it's doing to make the next edition of WebKit quote, even stronger, unquote. But even here, it's kind of weird. Like they were mentioning in this blog post, one of the new features they're adding to WebKit is they have this thing called the Ad Attribution Kit, which is a way of allowing tracking in a way that doesn't. As they admit in the blog post, they can't be 100% iron curtain protecting the privacy of Safari users against trackers, because websites simply will break. Okay, it will. People will
There's
not
a whole
use Safari
section on
because
how do we keep websites
Exactly.
from breaking because of what we're doing.
right. So they have this thing called ad attribution kit that allows a website to do some tracking, but under certain controls. Like anyway, I don't have enough notes here, but you also notice that. One of the things that Apple was complaining about Google for, and as well as the Department of Justice, is how, wow, Google says that they've got private browsing, but they're still tracking all the way through it. And again, we have the sword and shield against our users. And part of this blog post explains that ad attribution kit also works in Safari's private browsing. It's a little stronger, but it's not as though a website can't continue to track you through private browsing, as opposed to saying, okay, we don't care if the website breaks in private browsing mode. The whole point is that that's the whole reason why we've made this a separate mode. If you really want that kind of privacy, that you don't mind if things don't work, we will give you this mode. They didn't necessarily hide it. It's there for you to read, but it's another example of how, God, if you want to do business with Taboola, if you want to have your own ads business, if you want to be able to recommend things on the Apple Store app, on iTunes, on the App Store, you got to track people. And so it's a little befuddling when they decide to be this aggressive about it, because then they open themselves up to a lot of discussion about how much tracking that they're doing and whether they could be doing a better job.
As
of
Ed
it.
Puckett says in our YouTube chat, in other words, Apple really wants you to use Safari so they get the data.
Right.
If you really want to be private, you don't use either Chrome or Safari. You use something like Firefox and uBlock Origin, and you can protect yourself that way, or NextDNS and protect yourself that way.
Firefox is getting a lot of heat over the past couple of weeks too, because they also have announced that they have, if I'm not mistaken, that they are adopting a procedure that's a little bit like ad attribution kit, so that you can be tracked, but under better controls.
That's why you run the third-party extensions that block all that crap. I mean, look at this is really inside baseball. I'm kind of surprised Apple's doing this so publicly. But I guess really, if all the message is, oh, it's scary out there, everybody's spying you, but we protect your privacy, that's good for Apple overall. I'm not going to, who uses Safari? Do you use Safari, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was actually surprised on the phone that they said 30% of the people use Chrome, because I know very few people use Chrome on their phone. Safari.
I use Arc. I use Arc on my phone and on the desktop.
I probably have Chrome open more than anything else. But what I will say is that I'm slowly moving towards Safari, and it has to do with my password management, which is that.
Well, if you're going to use Apple's password manager, it's the easiest choice. Well, right?
Even just the current keychain is easier, especially because what I have trouble with is that the linkage of managing passwords inside of apps, both on the Mac and on the iOS, is clunky with third-party tools. It's just clunky. You can't, you get it all saved and it's not somewhere else and everything else. With Apple, it's just everywhere. You can just now get into what you need to get into. And that's a lot simpler. So
Mikah, what do you use? Are you a Safari? I mean, you're our iOS guy. Are you a Safari guy?
Yeah, I'm a Safari. I've been a Safari user I even use Safari on my Mac. I have Firefox and Chrome for the few things that I end up, if something is wonky on Safari for some reason, I'll go to Firefox and go to the site there, and then it'll typically work. And then I pretty much only open Chrome when we have our editorial meeting each week. That's the only time I use Chrome because of Google Meet.
Docs,
and it just doesn't work the same in Safari. So I will open Chrome for that. Everything else I do in Safari on my iPad, iPhone.
I think if Apple really cared, though, they wouldn't have blocked ad blockers. You can't really use the ad blockers on iOS are not good.
I disagree.
You think they're okay?
So this is the thing that's different.
Which one do you use?
I use one blocker, and Apple, when it introduced, because I agree, originally the extensions that were ad blockers were not great, but Apple introduced what they called content blockers. And upon introducing that technology, I've been very, very happy with it, because a lot of the extensions that do ad blocking, they end up just hiding the elements that are on the page.
White square with it.
And content blocking actually, as the page is loading, says you cannot load, you cannot load. It doesn't just hide it. It makes it so that it can't even show up in the first place. And so one blocker, the content blocker, is quite good at making pages load a lot faster because it doesn't just hide what's there and let it continue to load. So I'm quite happy with the one blocker system, but I do on Firefox when I have that open, or Chrome, one block, or what is it? uBlocker? What is the one that you always recommend?
We, as in Steve Gibson and I, only recommend uBlock Origin. It's a very aggressive ad blocker that will not run on Safari.
Yeah, I use that in Firefox and Chrome, but on Safari, it's one blocker.
Yeah, it's tough. I use Chrome on all my Apple products, but only because I am a multi-platform person. If Safari existed in a really good form on Android and on Windows and on every other platform, I would consider it. But the thing is, like, so much of my work every single day is adding to and withdrawing from a centralized bookmarks list. And I haven't found a third-party outside bookmarks manager that is as good and as reliable for cross-device syncing as Google Chrome is across devices. But the difference between using uBlock Origin and not using it, it transforms your experience online. Whenever I'm using a device that does not have good ad blocking, there's so much garbage, and it's so slow to load. The performance is terrible. There's so much garbage on the page that makes the page hard to access, hard to use, hard to read. And as important as it is for ad networks to exist and to thrive for the purpose of providing revenue for publishers on the web, it is becoming more and more important for individuals to have the ability to be as close to off the grid as possible. The FTC today announced that they are starting to become really, really concerned about what's called surveillance pricing, where the fact that if you hit a website or even like are shopping in a supermarket, the fact that you're being tracked as here's who you are, Andy is really interested in buying a car, and he is really, really close to it, so he's probably not likely to turn down a high offer, because at this point we feel as though through our tracking he's getting kind of desperate. That's the sort of information that pricing gets set against you, both in low areas and high areas. And that's where they're getting that information from, your online habits, your web browsing. And the FTC, they are starting to study the matter by having 8 of the companies that provide this kind of data for so-called surveillance pricing to give them some data to work with and to look at. So it becomes an absolute matter of self-defense that if you want a fair playing field in the real world, not just on the web, you have to control and lock down as much as possible. I did originally set up a Pi-hole on my home network that occasionally goes up and down. I kind of forget it exists. And when something goes wrong, I don't fix it immediately. But my goodness, it has so increased my priority to keep my Pi-hole up and working. That's a Raspberry Pi you put on the network with a special software and OS that it doesn't just simply, like, it's not just an ad blocker. It literally prevents your network from reaching out to any of the sites that record data. So basically nothing comes in, nothing goes out. It's that sort of stuff is going to become more and more important, because I don't want to even imagine how this is going to affect my ability to get a job, to live where I want to live, to get a car, to do anything. If that data that simply by hanging out on Reddit and then doing some desultory window shopping on Amazon is going to mean that I get to pay $38,000 for a car instead of $34,000 for a car, that's terrible. And that's a reason for open warfare.
Let's see what else is going on. We're going to take a little break. You're watching MacBreak Weekly with Alex, Andy, and today Mikah. Nice to have you, Mr. Sargent.
Good to be here.
Good news, I guess, for Apple in India. Now, after China, India is the next biggest cell phone market. India has cut the import tax on smartphones, which was, as I remember, the tariffs were huge. They were, they're still pretty huge. They were 20%. Now they're 15%. But Apple still imports most of its phones into India, even though they are trying to manufacture more of them there. 10 to 12% of the iPhones imported each year into India. 10%, I'm reading from Reuters, almost 10 to 12% of the Apple iPhones are imported into India. Well, that's interesting. That means 80 or 90% are made in India. A 5% reduction on the tax will result in a 30 to 50 million annual benefit to Apple. Well, that's nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing. Okay, never mind. Forget I started this story.
Well, but it does point out how important India is.
Yeah,
like if it's true that they're Apple, the thing is, like, Apple's done such a great job to make sure that in their future they're not 100% reliant on the iPhone. But however, we're getting the next earnings call is in 2 weeks' time. We'll find out what the new numbers are. But right now, about half of their money comes from iPhone sales, and so unless they've got some place to make 20% of that money off of something else, they're going to continue to have to find new people to buy iPhones. And India is one of the with 1.5 billion people that haven't really wanted. The middle class is now starting to get to a point where, according to analysts that I've read, basically what's happening in India is what happened in economically in China like 10 or 15 years ago, where there's a lot more money in play, and the idea of selling iPhones and iPhones in India might have been untenable 10 or 15 years ago. Now it's a huge opportunity that they're not going to miss out on. But price is still going to be a big issue.
iPhones were twice as expensive in Brazil, where they had 100% tariff on imported phones, which is one of the reasons Apple built a factory.
It's not just phones; it's everything electronic in Brazil.
Yeah,
it's an insane setup.
Well, it's working because they're now assembling. There has a Foxconn facility in Sao Paulo, and they assemble the phone there to avoid the tariffs. It's still pretty expensive. The retail price of an iPhone 15 in Brazil is $1,460 for the 128 gig model, according to MacRumors.
Every project I've done in Brazil, if I took my electronics, everybody in the crew that's Brazilian wants to buy the electronics from me. And I'm like,
that's funny.
Still need these. They're like, you just go buy them again. We'll pay you full retail price for your retail price for used equipment so that you can just go replace it. And I'm like, I don't want
back when the Soviet Union was in power, I remember we visited Czechoslovakia when they were still under the Russian iron fist. And Levi's were in great demand because you couldn't get Levi's. And we were told, bring Levi's if you can.
Blue jeans and Beatles records.
Yeah. And we visited, I remember visiting, where was it? I guess it was China. And they said, don't give them money, but do give them ballpoint pens if you have some. They're highly prized.
When I was, there have been countries where kids, just need a ballpoint pen to write with for school, and I used to have bags of them.
Oh, so you used to do that too in Zimbabwe?
Hand out in Zimbabwe and other places, and also shirts with prints on them. Any shirt that had American print on it, they would take that over money. Like I'd have money to pay, and they would trade me like sculpture mostly. So I'd go down with clothes and come back with rocks.
As you know, when you watch the Super Bowl, right at the end of the game, somehow magically the winners have T-shirts and hats that say Super Bowl victor and all of that. Yeah. Well, they make both.
Right.
And half of them are sold in Africa, where there is even though the Niners did not win the Super Bowl this year, but somewhere you can get a T-shirt that says Super Bowl winners, San Francisco 49ers.
Visit the alternative reality where the Red Sox won the '86 World Series.
Yes, wouldn't you like that T-shirt? And I would wear it everywhere.
But when if you go to Japan and some of the places where you can buy stuff, they just use our words as decoration.
Yeah, it's random.
Right? And so it's just like it's.
Well, I've seen a few Japanese and Chinese tattoos that are similarly formed. Random words. Speaking of random, Photoshop now can generate images like Dall-E or Midjourney. They've added Firefly into Photoshop. It's an LLM.
It's been around for a while, so
it's not as good as Midjourney. I mean, I've been playing with it. I mean, the generative fill is something I use every day.
That's where you have an image and then you expand out the edges, and it does a good job.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, just amazing. It's generative fill from scratch is good, but definitely not Midjourney. It's definitely not at that level, but it is.
Does Midjourney does outpainting too, right? You can.
It does, but you have with Photoshop, it's so easy. Like you
have the image already there in Photoshop.
You have the image. The most common thing that you do is you want to I had something where I had the folks that were in a field with a big storm behind them, and they were in full frame, right? And now I need to make them smaller and over to one side and create a whole bunch of sky and grass. And all I do is scale it over here and hit return, and then boom, it just fills it in, and it was perfect. And that's and it just happens so quickly, and it's so effective when you give it something when you give it a reference point, and you just say make more of that. It does it incredibly well. But the start from scratch is it's in beta, and it still feels like it's in beta.
Yeah.
Adobe also introduced an enhanced detail feature in the generative fill in Photoshop. For Illustrator, introduced generative shape fill to add detailed vectors in a designer's unique style. That's interesting. So it generates in the style of a particular artist. That's kind of cool. It also
the enhanced detail is actually really important, because essentially what it would do is when you would generate something for a photograph, say this is actually something I did the other day. Someone was taking the photo for me, and their finger was slightly on the lens.
Always. Every picture I take, I have a big thumb in my.
Yeah, so I highlighted that and used generative fill to get rid of it. But the problem was the photo was such high detail that the generated portion was kind of lower quality. So afterward, you kind of hit that button and it upscales it. So it brings it to the same level of detail. It doesn't look as noisy, and it looks like it actually belongs there.
Yeah. Honestly, a lot of people are Stable Diffusion, all these other tools, they're amazing, but they require a lot of knowledge to use them effectively. Now that these tools, now that Firefly is being mainstreamed off of the betas and into the main apps, and then into the mobile apps, access to these tools directly, just as a matter of course, just as simple as pushing sliders for brightness and contrast and color, that is a total game changer. The number of times that I have just on my phone been able to keep a photo that I would have rejected earlier because dang it, there's just not enough room on the left side. But okay, we'll just generate. Give me some extra headroom above this person. I zoomed in too close, and we'll just simply give me extra headroom for that one person. Or I need an illustration of something, and I've got a picture that I took a while ago of a hockey player holding a hockey stick. That I really want them to be holding a field hockey stick or a golf club. The desktop version of Photoshop, you can do a generative replacement where you basically say, this thing, I want it to look like this thing. And I'll give you an example photo. And it doesn't always work, but it takes a job that would have taken maybe an hour and a certain amount of skill into something that almost anybody can achieve in 10 or 15 minutes.
Well,
this is where Adobe earns the $10 a month for me. The funny ones are the ones you don't even notice what it's doing. And so there was this one where I had a lot of times when people send me images that I need to use for thumbnails, or I need to use them for something, they're always square or sometimes vertical, and I need them to be 16:9. So I just add stuff to them using generative fill. And the funny thing is it kept on, with one person it kept on adding a woman next to them. And I was like it just put a woman next every time it did it. And I couldn't figure out, I was like, why is that? There was a piece of a hand in the lower corner of the image that I didn't even see. And so when I said extend this, it just said, there's a hand. And I guess it decided it was a woman's hand. Just put a whole woman there. Oh, yeah.
And I was like, and I also realized, I wonder what they cut out there. Anyway, so, but
give them a hand, they'll generate a whole woman. Yeah.
It just made a whole woman. But it was a funny thing that, and then as soon as I cut it out, I just put a background behind it. Like it was all leveraging off of that. Like, I mean, it was a tiny little corner, part of a hand that it made a decision about.
Let me bring Star Wars into this. For reasons, I wanted to take the classic image of in the first Star Wars movie of Leia, like hiding at the end of the corridor, crouching and hiding the plans and the message inside R2-D2, and I wanted to replace R2-D2 with something else. And the take this thing, replace it with something else feature wasn't working. So I thought, okay, well, I mean, it's not going to work for everything. This is still a beta. Just remove R2-D2, remove this thing, expecting that it would say, okay, well, here's a content as had happened in so many other examples. Okay, so I'll just continue the hallway, could make a generative AI of the background. It was impossible for me to get Firefly and Adobe to not replace R2 with something that it thinks that Leia should have been interacting with. It was like, like 3 out of every 5 were like suddenly like some kid in a playground and it looks like Leia is like wiping something off their chin because they've seen so many pictures like that. And like, I could not figure out how to say, don't replace it with any object. Make it look like this thing was not in the shot at all. And it's just reminding me that one of the exciting and unexpected challenges of AI is not simply is simply understanding how to use English, how they understand and process what you say to them. Like I know that it has the ability to remove R2 and leave nothing behind it, but I couldn't. Take the outlined object, replace it with empty hallway floor, a wall behind it, and some lights. And there must have been some English text that would have gotten it done, but I could not figure it out.
That's the future of the skills of the future generations will be prompt design.
The sequel of 2001 had it exactly right. It's one of my favorite scenes from any sci-fi movie where Bob Balaban, who's playing Dr. Chandra, I think, the person who built and programmed the original HAL. And now he's at the University of Chicago Urbana. They're preparing to go to the Discovery that's been derelict and figure out if they can restart HAL and figure out what went wrong. So he has the SAL computer, which is an exact duplicate. And you see him programming Sal to solve the problem together of trying to figure out how to restart HAL. And it's not, this is Unix. I know this. It's his genius as because he's a high level computer scientist. He knows how to speak like a psychologist and he's trying to walk Sal towards the idea of, I want to turn you off and then turn you on again. And you remember what happened to HAL? Like, oh yeah, like, I want you to create a new project file. I want you to call it Phoenix. Do you know why I'm calling it Phoenix? Like, Phoenix was the tutor to Achilles. Okay, I didn't know that. But what else is a phoenix? Oh, a great bird that arises from like the death of ashes. Yes. So I'm trying to figure this out. Like, and he can't just simply do it. He has to basically talk her into it, or basically be empathic with this computer. And the last thing she does, will I dream? Like, oh, well, of course you'll dream. All intelligent creatures dream. And basically Sal decides that, okay, I know that there's a chance that I won't wake up again, but this is what I'm going to do. This is my orders, and this is the program I'm going to function. I think that this is where we're all leading for. If we're inadvertently creating a generation of people who have to patiently explain what you expect from something, and then when it does something wrong, you don't fly off the handle. You try to identify where the lapse in communication was and encourage them to give a different answer that will solve the problem. Like, that would be a wonderful side effect of artificial intelligence before the robots harvest our organs, of course.
The funny thing is that anybody who's had a large organization knows that delegation oftentimes is that way. You ask for something and you get something completely different. And that's the key to partnering with great people who work for you, is that you
have to have prompt engineering for humans. Yes.
I very much look at when I'm trying to get something done and I ask someone to do it and they do it another way, sometimes better, but sometimes worse. I go, well, how was I not effective there? How was I not? Like, I was not effective at giving that instruction in a way that achieved the result. So
yeah, here is the goal we're trying to achieve. Here is the plan that I'm proposing. Do you see any faults with this plan? Yeah. Even though you're saying, no, I've come up with a plan. It's going to work. Just do it. If it doesn't work, we'll try it again. Like, do you see any faults with this plan? Can you contribute to this?
I got to tell you that it is amazing, though, when you open up an AI, whatever it is, and ask it things like, what are all the products in this vertical? Like, you'll ask, like, to give me all, and it'll break all of them down. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each one? What are, and it's pretty, it can be pretty amazing. But then when you get down to these silly things where it goes, I just want you to put the foot over here. No, I will not put a foot there.
Nor will I open the pod bay door. I'm just saying,
Yes,
I know I got us into a rabbit hole, and I won't continue it further. But I'm just amazed with Claude, for instance, how great the results are when I start off by treating it like a human, saying, "Hi, I understand that you can help me with this problem. I'm really looking forward to working with you because I've been told that you're really, really good at this task I wanted to do. And then for some reason,
does that make it better?
If I include that, things I think possibly because I am basically defining broadly what I wanted to do. I'm just telling it what a good result would consist of, how to look at it, and I don't know. And I don't understand.
That's the real problem with AI. I don't know. I don't know.
We don't know
what results.
I
don't care if I can abuse you for good results by treating you nicely, or if I can get results from you from abusing you. Period. I just want the results. If you're forcing me to be nice, I'll be nice. Damn it.
And this is how you also get into superstitions. Is that I did a bunch of things and then something else came out better.
Right.
When like when you're prompt engineering, you're like you want to tell it where its point of origin, its target, what you want in between those two things, and what structure you want, and that's all it's looking for.
And also the role.
That's my superstition.
You also have to give it the role.
The target, its point of origin is its role. Like you are this. Explain this to because like if you say explain this to a journalist, if you it's like let's say a medical thing, explain this to a doctor, to a journalist, to a 5th grader, to a 12th grader, it'll all be different. And you say, but this is the subject matter that I want, and then I want it in a structure. I want it in a spreadsheet. I want to be concise, or I want it to be, or I want it to be conversational, and all those things. But those 4 elements seem to be what it's looking for most of the time.
Yeah.
But we can say all kinds of things around it.
Yeah. And it's useful to say, I know that this prompt is going to give the wrong result, but the wrong result will allow me to help us to understand what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to be patient and not scold it for giving a wrong result, saying, that's great. Can you give me a version of this code that doesn't have any dependencies on an external JavaScript framework?
Leo, you need Prompt Weekly. Yeah,
I think so. I think so.
Prompt Weekly. Andy and I will be on that show with you.
Yes.
Prompt Weekly. Here's the prompt that I created.
Well,
people being very polite.
I do want to warn all of you. Mike already knows this. That I think one of the things we're going to do with the new Twit is just impromptu conversations, and I might just text you and say, "Hey, you want to get together tomorrow at 2 and let's talk about prompt engineering?" You and Andy.
That sounds great.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, it'd be fun.
That would be super fun.
Again, you're the inspiration. It's office hours is really inspiring me to think more about what community building, and then we do it in the Discord stage, and we have people participate. It'd be really fun. But we don't have to build a show around prompt engineering. Thank God.
I do. That's what like my firesides that I've done in the past.
Yes,
have been
exactly.
mostly like I don't want to have a certain schedule.
It's not worthy of a show. Or maybe it is worthy of a show, but I don't want to do a show. I don't want to have to do something again next Thursday. Exactly.
I don't want to commit that far.
But you're famous for that. You've started more podcasts than I have.
I can't stop. We just started doing we were talking about last night. They were like, let's do a cooking podcast where we don't cook, we just talk about cooking. And I was like, oh, it sounds like
But we don't make it a podcast. So this is the new thing. Don't make a podcast. This is my whole new idea is we all have studios now in our homes, basically.
Right.
And we can arrange to, hey, let's talk tomorrow about your favorite way to make spaghetti sauce. You do that
labs
already.
Like that. We do labs like that where we just go, hey, we're all going to, Oliver Breidenbach, I said, hey, let's just meet on Friday. We'll talk about Mimo Live. Like there's a bunch of things I don't understand. And then I just go up to Discord and I say, hey, we're doing this thing. And like 30 people show up and we all sit there and talk and chat.
Yesterday, we were building the studio up in the attic. Russell and Anthony and I were up there. And Anthony, who's smart about this, said, turn on the stage. Immediately, 93 people popped into the stage to watch us kind of go, well, I don't know. Maybe if you did this. But it just really is inspiring to think we have this wonderful community. And how can we just like get together on a ad hoc? We don't have to make it a show, but on an ad hoc basis. Because there's so much stuff to talk about. And even on this show and other shows that we do, it's the digressions that are the most interesting part,
And we are really good at those.
Yes.
Kind of a little too good. It's our brand. Hey, longest headline I've ever seen in Apple's newsroom. Apple.
Yes.
Isn't it? It goes off the page. Apple scores record 72 Emmy Award nominations and sweeps across top categories, including first ever outstanding limited series for lessons in chemistry, outstanding drama series for The Morning Show and Slow Horses, and outstanding comedy series for Palm Royale. 72 Emmy.
I think somebody needs to go to an SEO. Somehow.
I know. I was like, what SEO conversation was that? Like, what conversation created that?
Wow. Well, they wanted to get them all in, and
yeah,
it's hard to get them all in because they got.
There was a bunch of meetings about that.
Can you imagine if they put 72 in the headline?
Well, they practically did, because the next paragraph goes on.
Oh, my word.
Loot, Hijack, the Steve Martin documentary, which was excellent. Girls State, The Reluctant Traveler with Eugene Levy, not so excellent. Masters of the Air, I haven't seen it on my list. Silo, wow, that was great. Physical, which was okay. Hannah Waddingham, Home for Christmas, which, if the only thing it had to recommend it was better than Mariah Carey.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. You agree.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. But I'm a famed
I enjoyed
Carey
that a lot.
hater, so I don't know.
But Hannah Waddingham's great. A little cheesy.
It was a good old fashioned like Christmas special. It wasn't
exactly.
It wasn't sarcastic. It wasn't. Yeah, it was
The
fun.
New Look, which I love, and which is the story of Christian Dior and Coco Chanel during World War II and after. Sugar, which was the weirdest noir cop series ever.
Good.
It was good and weird.
I know, but it was good.
It was very good.
Wow, I didn't realize everybody was watching all this stuff. I have not.
Yeah,
seen
we have a lot of free time, Micah. You have to do a lot more than I do. Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, executive producers. Morning Show lands first ever nomination for Best Drama. I'm told, I tried to watch it, maybe because I worked in TV for so long. I just hated it. But apparently the newest season is remarkably better. So we'll see. Best Drama, first time. Most performance nominations for a drama series, including Best Actor in a Drama for stars and executive producers Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. Girls State and Steve, multiple nominations, including Outstanding Documentary and Nonfiction Special. There are Reese and Jennifer shaking hands on the morning show. Has anybody watched that recently? Is it better?
I haven't.
No,
I completely forgot.
You know what's great? Slow Horses. God, I love that
That's
show.
a good one. Yeah.
That is
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman is
keeping up his
amazing.
streak as being good as everything. Yeah.
Yeah. As a aging, gassy spy. It's very good. So you know what? This is 5 years old. Apple TV Plus. It was a little slow start, but I think with 72 nominations, you could say that they've done very, very well. Yes.
I actually think that the direction that they're going now makes more sense than a lot of other ones, which is they're starting to buy more content that already exists from other vendors.
Yes, that's the story. Another story, which is they want to deepen their catalog, which has not been deep.
Yeah.
So they deepen the catalog there, but I think the one thing that there was another article that we were looking at, which is that they're talking about wanting to spend less money on they're wanting to control costs, and I think that's a mistake, because I think that the big thing is that I know a lot of people, and when you get people in the industry that just dream of working on an Apple, an Apple product, when they get to work on one of these movies. My brother worked on one last year, and it's just like everything works. And you're not used to that in Hollywood. Like Hollywood's generally ruined by somebody who says we can't spend more money on the M&Ms, and being able to work into a production, have the production just run the way it's supposed to. You have all these people aspiring, whether it's actors or directors or the below the line, aspiring to work on an Apple product. I think just make less and keep doing that, and then just buy up the stuff that you want to fill in. You don't have you just stick with that kind of, we are the ones you hope that someday you'll work for. I think that there's an aspirational thing that's really to Apple's advantage of attracting just the best talent.
But there is the problem, because Netflix seems to have unlimited money and spending massive amounts.
They have a lot more subscribers.
Yeah,
but they also spread it out among a lot of things. I mean, there's not that many Netflix things that most of us want to watch. I mean, there are some. I mean, there's
some. But the thing is, there's something that everybody,
they've got
something that anybody's going to want to watch.
Yeah.
Bloomberg had a couple of pieces about this. One of them was citing a bunch of sources about, like, Eddie Q specifically personally having meetings with production heads, saying that we really got to keep costs down now. The checkbook is not open unlimitedly. They also had some numbers from like they aggregated some numbers from 2 or 3 different sets of analysts. That Apple TV represents 0.2% of TV viewing. Growth of new subscribers is very weak, and that they're on the high. They said the quote higher end of rates of cancellation unquote. And if they're putting $20 billion into it, it's a good time for them to ask, can we get more people and have them to continue to subscribe to our channel more cheaply if they're looking for like more of an HBO Max experience. But Max is, I went from being like a light user of I really can't call it Max, HBO Max. I hate that name change. I can't tell you how much I hate that name change. But after doing like a deep dive, it used to be like I would look at like the front page. Oh, that's an interesting movie. Oh, Wonka. I kind of want to see that. That's great. Doing a deep dive and finding out just how many shows that I enjoy are on that thing. Like I'm probably going to be canceling Netflix sometime in the next month as soon as I finish binging The Crown. But Max is here to stay, and it's because of that diversity of content. It's great to have all that great like premium, high class, high quality sort of stuff.
You're just happy Dr. Pimple Popper has found a home, aren't you? You just admit that.
No, I haven't. I've managed to keep her off my radar.
Is that I think that you can have that diversity by just buying it. Like I don't think Apple has to pay for all of that. So I think Apple. What I think is Apple keeps making really, really high end, because I have to admit, I give a lot of shows a benefit of the doubt when I see an Apple. When it's in Apple TV Plus, because I know that, well, at least it's going to be made well. Like it's going to. At least
I started watching. What's that new one? Presumed Innocent. I started watching that, and it's highly desaturated. This drives me crazy. There's some sort of weird trend now to shoot stuff.
It's not shooting; it's the color correction. My brother actually was the A camera for that.
Well, would you explain why? Am I wrong that it looks very desaturated?
It's a choice
weird
by
LUT.
I mean, that's a choice made by the director and the colorist later.
No, it's not your brother's fault. I'm not blaming him.
No. I'm just saying, but they don't make that decision on it. It's a film look. It's the idea. It looks like film. You know, I'm
watching it on OLED TV. I want deep.
Yeah, no.
Black.
There's a lot of
Samsung look.
We were at Amazon. Amazon has in Culver City. Amazon has 5 theaters that are LED walls. So one's 8K and a bunch of 4K ones. And we were down there looking at footage on these LED walls. And when they turn it on, like this guy's in a cave. He comes out of the cave and he's out on this open desert. And when it went bright,
your eyes.
You could you could feel the heat.
Like
you could like it was so bright. It wasn't. You weren't really feeling heat from the wall, but you could feel it. You know, like and then of course, film guys got up immediately and said, "Well, but that's the film look is desaturated. It's low contrast. That's
24 frames."
And there was a bunch of us. that were like, "Does it have to be?" Like really?
Yeah, no.
Right.
Like,
who says it has to be?
You know, and so I think that there is. I mean, but I think that that's obviously a creative choice there. But I agree with you that I prefer luscious color and you know, taking full advantage.
I actually stopped watching.
TV.
I watched 5 minutes of it and I said, it looks bad. I don't like how it looks.
It's pretty. I mean,
I'll keep watching.
I'm not used to. I don't watch a lot of stuff that makes me uncomfortable all the time, and this one makes me uncomfortable all the time.
Well, now that I know,
it's just a really.
Now that I know
it's really good.
Your brother shot it. I'll watch it. By the way, diversity is the word in the Emmy Awards. They spread around a lot of Emmys. Netflix got the most nominations, but Disney had 3 shows with the most nominations. FX earned the most nominations in the network's history, and Hulu had the 3 most nominated shows. So they spread them around. I guess the Emmys have a lot of categories. Or a lot of nominees in each. FX Shogun got 25 nominations, which it deserved. That was a great show. The Bear, love The Bear, second place with 23 nominations. Only Murders in the Building,
for
21.
Most nominated.
Yeah. That should be like, and the winner in most nominated. So look at Steve Martin, who's in his 70s, has a nominated documentary about his life, and he also is starring in one of the top shows, 21 nominations for Only Murders in the Building.
On 2 different channels.
On 2 different networks. HBO, part of Warner Brothers Discovery and Netflix, perennial leaders in the Emmys, each captured I'm confused. Oh, I see. They need a writer on Bloomberg. HBO, which is part of Warner Brothers Discovery, and Netflix, perennial leaders in the Emmys, each captured nominations in the Best Drama category and will compete for awards in the Best Anthology.
And how much does that affect? I kind of want your opinion on this, Alex. Like, there's a difference. There's on the one level, Apple I guess, has the reputation of, if you're working on an Apple, if your movie or your series has landed on Apple, you're going to have if I understand you're saying correctly, is going to have a better time of production than it would on any other streamer. But like, if they are not delivering the sort of audience that allows them to translate that amazing series that is super high quality to actual Emmys for like your Rec Room, like, is that also a factor in what would bring people to Apple TV?
Well, I think a lot of people still feel like, I mean, the Emmys come whether you get a viewership or not. You know, like, so those Emmys that come to a show but
voters have to see it. Yeah.
They don't have to. The voters have to see it. But I mean, the point is that the Emmys are usually not connected necessarily to the audience cume, right? So it's what they think is a great. You know, so getting the money and the resources to produce your best show. You know, because that's going to be your calling card.
To a company like Apple, they're not looking for audience numbers, or are they?
I think eventually they want to, but I think part of it is also
prestige might be more important to them, right?
Yeah, and I think it's part of an ecosystem that, you know, I think that Apple's part of a larger ecosystem for both Apple and Amazon is part. You know, you don't want to externalize all the content away from where you're going, and Apple's still figuring it out. But what they have figured out how to do something at a really high level. And, you know, I think that they've actually, I mean, again, it's you have a bunch of users. Can you get them to pay a little bit more for an overall package that includes music and movies and news and everything else? The Apple, you know, like, so it's not as direct that they don't need that money in the same way that Netflix does. Like Netflix and Max. Right. And Disney are, you know, they have to live on what they can hunt. You know, Apple and Amazon have a bunch of ancillary business around this that matters, that creates stickiness that is different. And so they don't need to make the same, they don't need to be explicit like that.
And investors don't care about necessarily audience. Right at this stage in streaming, they don't care about audience. They don't care about awards. They don't care about prestige. Right. They care about profitability. Whereas before it was like, how come we have to have a streaming content out there? We have to have exclusive content. Now it's like, if we develop content that we can then basically let Netflix have or Apple have for 6 months, that's okay if it's increasing our bottom line. But one of the things that kind of at this stage in Apple TV Plus, it's starting to occur to me if it's not vulnerable to the same thing that happened like to the Apple Watch, where Apple launched it thinking that this is the new wearable computer that is an extension of your iPhone, that if you want to open and shut your garage door with your home automation system, you don't have to take out your phone. Look, you can actually see it opening and closing on your magical watch. And then after seeing how it was selling and who was buying it, decided that, no, this is a fitness watch and it has some cool iPhone connectivity, but it's a fitness watch. What if Apple TV Plus decided that we launched it thinking that we're not going to get Netflix numbers, we're not even going to try. We're going to be a prestige home for Martin Scorsese, for Spielberg, for Tom Hanks, for all these really wonderful things. What if after a few years, they're saying, that was a great idea. I'm glad we tried it. We're going to still do stuff like that. But the purpose of Apple TV Plus in our portfolio is live sports, live events, things that we can stream through our boxes.
That's coming up for everybody. I mean, everybody's trying to figure out how to get into live. You know, I mean, But Apple TV Plus can't do everything now, unless Apple's is happy to keep. Well, oh no, absolutely. No, but I'm wondering if Apple is happy having something that if they think it's underperforming, to say, we need to adjust our plan so that this is performing very, very well and it's achieving the goals that we want. Or is the goal simply, as you say, and as we've said when we were discussing Apple's packages, if it just simply makes the $40 a month package of Apple services feel better, that's worthwhile to us. That is worth $20 billion to us. It also has halo effects related to, for instance, I mean, even if you look at, what we haven't seen Apple do yet is take advantage of a lot of the network effects that are possible between a lot of the different things. And no one's really doing this right now. Netflix is talking about doing it. So Netflix is the first company that's probably thinking as hard as they probably could. I mean, you'd think that Disney would be really the leader in this area because they've thought about selling goods connected to their movies since forever. But the Netflix is looking at building games that are related to their core products. Apple has Arcade. They have the Vision Pro. They have phones. They have content, and they're not really yet tying those things together, where you're having bigger experiences. I think you're going to see more of that. And again, I think I have no information about this, but I just feel like logically, eventually you're going to see scenes or behind the scenes or something in the Vision Pro in 180 degree stereo from the TV shows that you are watching on Apple TV, and it feels like an obvious thing. And there's also, with all the Apple TV stuff, there's lots of Apple products that are getting product placement. There's lots of, there's, a lot of them, and you don't even know who's good or bad anymore because everybody's got an iPhone.
Yes.
So anyway, it's a world where everybody, they definitely have a monopoly on inside of Apple TV. So
can I say I'm still salty about like that trick spoiling one of the best new mysteries movies of the past 10 years. As soon as I was aware, it was this guy.
Oh, damn
it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I saw, there was one that
I wasn't supposed to know that.
There was one recently that I saw that, and I saw someone with an Android, and I saw the other guy with an iPhone. I remember what it was, and I immediately knew the end of the movie. Like, it was like the first 2 minutes of the movie. I was like, oh, I know.
Wait a minute, you're saying that the murderer always has Android?
Bad people always, Apple won't give you iPhones for bad people. They won't give you product placement. You have to buy it yourself.
I won't spoil it, but there is a really good movie in which, again, it's a mystery, and for reasons of the scene, somebody has to hand somebody an iPad. Okay, but because that person could not be seen holding an iPad, they do the scene by the person receiving the iPad is sitting on the sofa, an iPad is tossed in from out of frame, and then the camera moves to reveal the person who tossed it so that they could hand the iPad off without that person being seen, a bad guy being seen.
What would happen? Would Apple sue them?
Well, they give them.
They give them the iPads, and so that's the deal.
Money. Sometimes.
Come on. You got $1 billion budget, and you're worried about getting free iPads.
Oh man,
Stop it! Like, knock it off.
Anytime you see a laptop open and you see a sticker in the center where the Apple logo is, you're like, whoa, someone's passed out.
Didn't
get something free from Apple.
You're also concerned about your movie being held up because someone said, "Oh, I don't appreciate that. I love the product placement of our little Jiffy Master Gopher garden implement. We're not happy that it was used to beat someone to death over the head with it. We are not, unless you obscure our logo and our product in every single frame, we're going to sue and we're going to prevent distribution of your film."
Right.
So,
yeah.
Two of the nominees of the 72 nominations for Apple were for commercials. Album cover, which was an ad for the iPhone 15. I don't remember it. And Fuzzy Feelings, which was an ad for iPhone and Mac.
That was great.
Tell me, describe these. I can't play them, or Apple will take them.
Fuzzy Feelings was the stop motion.
Oh, I love that
combination
one.
of video and stop motion of a holiday where somebody has a kind of like a mean, what seems to be a mean boss, or at least an incompetent boss, but she's a felt artist, and so she makes these felt dolls and makes animations her, of course, with her snappy iPhone, and her ways of basically resetting her sang Freud is basically having a stop motion doll of her boss and basically having awful things happen to it. But then she comes to realize that, I'm judging him too harshly. I think I'll have nice things happen to this doll. It was actually a very fun holiday thing.
Apple ad spot focuses on portrait mode via an album cover skit. So album cover was where they did the portrait shots and then they fought over who was in focus. Remember that one? Anyway, they got a nomination for that as well. Yeah. It was dope.
Again, the video they dropped today, the diss track that they dropped today against Google Chrome, was funny. Yeah. The effects were great. It was perfect. And it was like, oh man, I hope Google uses its resources to do something half as funny in response.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly with Mikah Sargent, who's trying to get a word in edgewise, but you're very polite. Don't be so polite, Mikah. You've got to learn to yell. And
he's saving his voice for his other 3 shows he has to do.
It's great to have you, Mikah. Thank you for filling in for Jason Snell. Andy Anako's also here, and Alex Lindsay. Time now for our picks of the week. I'll tell you what, we'll give pride of place to Mikah today. What is unless you don't have a pick?
Oh, Lord, is it already time for picks of the week?
You don't have a pick.
You know what? I do have a pick. And too bad that it is sold out right now.
No, that's good. Nobody stopped. That doesn't stop anybody. It's okay.
So what I'm going to give everyone, and I'm vamping for a second so I can give John the link, is this big old box I have right here.
Is that where your hair dryer is stored? What's that?
Yeah, exactly. So this big white box is the Philips Hue UVC disinfecting box.
Oh, you can put anything in that. It's as big as a cooler.
Anything you want inside. It has 2 UVC bulbs up at the top and this huge space. And it has this little kind of wire rack that you can put things in. It was created in the first place for baby bottles. However, I've used it for tech. I've used it for medical implements. I've used it for my phone. Basically anything you want to make sure that's clean and ready to go, you can put inside of it. It's got stainless steel.
It's got a rack. It's like a
inside.
dishwasher.
It's like a dishwasher. And what's great about it is that it actually has a built-in fan and filter so that if you wash something, you can put it inside and you do a drying cycle that then ends with a UV blast. Now, the reason I got this is because I was recently diagnosed with sleep apnea. I have members of my family who had it, and I do end up having it.
That sucks.
And so yeah, every night I use a mask, and you've got to keep that thing clean,
it's a CPAP
or it can be
cleaner.
very bad for you.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's what I primarily use it for. But I'll also, if I go out with my phone to different places, I do a little session with that. I put all sorts of stuff in it. Honestly, at this point, it's kind of fun. But yeah, it's great for your keys, your electronics, whatever you can.
You really
fit inside,
are an
frankly.
old man in a young man's body. You have sleep apnea,
right?
You're too young for that.
Wild.
That's bizarre. Unfortunately, the Philips Hue UV light sanitizer box is currently unavailable.
Yes, it has come back in stock a couple of times, and so I think they can only make so many of them at a time. People are buying them. As I mentioned, they seem to be primarily for use for new parents, but great for other stuff as well.
It's a great idea. I love your pick. Thank you. I'm looking to see if anywhere else we can find it online.
You can often find them from sleep apnea stores. I've seen them from sleep apnea suppliers. They will have
Looks
those for
like
sale.
it's out of stock at Walmart also. Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. $145 though, not cheap.
Yeah, not cheap. But
big enough to put your head in, which I would not recommend.
Very bad.
I actually used it the other day when I was doing Mikah's Crafting Corner to quickly cure some glue.
Oh, did that work?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Because think about they use them at nail salons to quickly cure the nails. Yeah.
So I have a recommendation. We, as you know, we're building a studio in my attic. And one of the biggest challenges was, well, what are we going to do? We're going to hang lights from the ceiling and cameras, or how are we going to do that? That's how we do it here. We have a very tall ceiling, and we have lots of room, and we have very big lighting rigs and stuff. What do you call that? Truss. We have a truss, which is not the same thing as the guy gets with the hernia. That's a different kind of truss. This is for, although you should probably look into that. It could go very well with your CPAP machine, Mike. No, this truss.
My abdominal wall is great.
You don't need no truss. I don't need no stinking truss.
I need no stinking truss.
So then I have to give credit to Anthony Nielsen, who has the setup of a Twitch streamer, but doesn't actually stream. He's got anyway, he said, get this from Corsair. As you remember, Corsair, which was famous for making gaming PCs and motherboards and stuff for years, as memory. They acquired Elgato, and they've become now a creator thing. So we bought, this is crazy, the Platform 6 Creator Edition, which is just a big desk, but it has all this stuff you can hang stuff on. And, it's $17.96, $17.99. It was expensive, but it was a lot cheaper than the desk I'm sitting at right now, which we had to have custom made. And this has all the stuff that works with Elgato and the lights and everything. So I'm pretty happy with this so far. It came in 5 boxes that weighed a total of 300 pounds. I had to ferry piece by piece, every little piece up to the attic, one by one, and then finally got to the table. And thank goodness Burke came over, and we hefted it up into the attic. And now it's there, and it's never, ever leaving from Corsair.com. You should come over, John. You can see it. Yeah. John is our retiring studio manager who will be with us for a few more weeks. And he's been with us for 15 years, and I'm going to miss the hell out of you, John. But I've got this table to make up for it. Andy Anako, your pick
he lifted all of that before.
I'm actually naming the table John Jammer B.
Aww.
Okay, just in your name. I'm gonna have a little plaque made. Andy Anako, your pick of the week.
I have semi-retired my Apple Watch SE because at least for the summer, I found something I like a lot more, which is this cheap $20 like Casio watch. Okay?
Bright red, yeah.
Bright red. This is the F108WH. Costs all of like $25.
It's an illuminator.
It's available in like 5 colors.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got it because I just wanted a fun bright red watch that if I wore it to the beach, and it's actually water resistant, but if I lost it or it got bunged in the water or by the sand, I wouldn't care about it. And I wound up wearing it like every single day because it really going cold turkey against smartwatches. I have a Pixel Watch and an Apple Watch SE. I didn't realize how sick and tired I am of having to recharge a watch every single day, and how little I use like the actual smartwatch features of it. I do like the fitness tracking. I do like getting data about how much I moved. But the thing is, I'm getting that data from my phone anyway, because I'm not doing the sort of sports where I can't have a phone in my pocket. So it wasn't getting me that. And the idea that it's a $25 watch with a battery that's going to last like 2 or 3 years. And I've also realized how much I miss having just a box of watches and deciding which watch I want to wear that day. And these, again, the Casio, they're not necessarily like retro watches. They just like never stopped making them.
They just look
so
that
if there's
way.
A watch,
yes.
No, it's if you I put in a link to like if you go to Amazon, search for Casio watches and set like set the price scale from like $15 to $30, you will see watches you've recognized since
every
the
nerd.
80s.
Yeah.
And they now look kind of classic as opposed to like,
right.
Hey, I'm retro. Oh wow, look, slap bracelets. Hey, look, we're going to see Oingo Boingo Boingo at the Rat. Like, no, it's like just a cool watch. And even if you do, like, I do have like a couple of nice watches. Having something like this in the rotation, it just makes me happy, and it gives me a certain sense of joy.
And they still sell the data bank watch. $21 with the calculator on the front.
That's the other great thing. So if you want to get like the watch that Mr. Bean wore in most of his shows, that's the Casio DBC 611. That's $49. If you want Dwight Schrute's watch from The Office, that's the Casio DBC 30. You can now get the DBC 32, which looks the same. That's a whopping $75. But I'm now 90% sure now that I'm going to get like an actual G-Shock like at the end of the summer. If it still seems like because that's a $110, $120. But the idea of having a watch that the one that I'm looking at, it's a G-Shock, which means that it is designed to go through hell and still work. And this model is solar, so that solar, and it sets its time by radio. So the idea is that if they can bury me with this watch in 30 years, if they dig me up and take my watch and leave it in the sun for overnight, it will still work. I'm not sure that any of that is true of any smartwatch that costs like 10 times as much as that's going to be. And finally, once I start getting kind of excited by this, because these models have been around for years and years and years, there is like an ongoing like shared knowledge bank of how to modify these watches. Like if you don't want so much, if you don't want like it had a couple of like, I don't want to flaunt that this is water resistant and that it has an illuminator on it. So it says, oh, well, actually, if you use just rubbing alcohol, you can take those things off. If you go to AliExpress, you can like replace the case with like a titanium case, replace like the bezel of it with something a little bit more flashy or less flashy. It's just really, really super interesting. So I'm not saying that it's better than an Apple Watch or a fitness watch or anything like that. I'm saying that maybe for $25 to $30, that will deliver a certain amount of joy on your nightstand that a few times a month you will want to avail yourself of.
Andy's retro watch, ladies and gentlemen. And how often do you have to charge that, Andy? Never.
Oh, yeah. See, the thing is, like, yeah.
Add a
the
battery
funny thing
once
is, for
a year.
for $25 for a $25
It's a
watch,
7-year battery.
It's a 7-year battery, and you can replace the battery. Like
7 years.
that is
What
every
is that?
7 years,
Whether you want to or
relationship
not.
with your consumers, right?
A C3025 or whatever.
Yeah, it's just a standard. Yeah. Mr. Alex Lindsay, your pick of the week, sir.
So I went to see one of my favorite bands last over the weekend, Hop Monk.
I love Hop
in
Monk.
Novato.
It's good, isn't
Hop
it?
Monk is great. They
Love
got a great
going
little
there to
space
see
outside
bands.
for these concerts.
Yeah.
So Toad the Wet Sprocket played. Jason and I both really enjoy watching.
By the way,
Sprocket.
you
And
weren't here last week. We did make you had left early,
Toad the Wet
and
Sprocket.
we still made your pick Toad the Wet Sprocket. So just so you know,
It
because
is.
Jason loves him
I was
too.
so excited. I was so excited to go. I went. I took my kids to see Toad. And as always, it's a great. I mean, if you haven't heard of Toad the Wet Sprocket, you should. You should find out when they're playing. You should go see them. They're just so much fun, and almost everybody in the audience knows almost every word of every song. So it's a fun sing fest that we all have with it.
That's cute.
But the opening act was someone I'd never heard of. I didn't even know if there was going to be an opening act for the concert. I figured, well, someone's going to be there. And Glenn, one of Glenn's friends, the lead singer for Toad the Wet Sprocket is Glenn, and his friend is Matt the electrician. I don't know Matt's last name.
What a
but it's
great
Matt the
name for
electrician.
a band, Matt the
It's just a
Electrician.
guy. It's just Matt the electrician. And he said he was like, I used to be an electrician. And so anyway, so
Wow.
Matt the electrician, and if you like kind of bluegrassy, kind of singer-songwriter with a guitar kind of sound, oh, he was really good. He was just so much fun to listen to. And you don't get the opportunity to hear great artists that are not well known, all the time, where he's one of those artists that when you open up his song in Apple Music, the lyrics are all just one page, like you don't get to, it's rare, but he's so good. And the first, I guess, the best song on the set that I heard and what I've been listening to a lot is The Bear, which is one of his songs from a couple years ago, but he's got a new album out, and I don't know him. I don't know anything about him other than I saw him play, and I was like, oh, this guy should be more popular than he is, And so I just want to spread the word that Matt, the electrician, is worth. If you like that kind of music, if you like the Luminaires and the Noah Kahns,
I do. That's my favorite style. Yeah.
If that's your jam,
That's my jam,
man. Then Matt will fit right into that mix. So anyway, it's really good.
He can fix your electricity too. So
It's
it's
so
good.
much
It's
fun
good. You
too.
can
If you
come
get to
over
see
and
him
add
live,
a plug, or
if you get to see him live, he's just got a great stage personality. He's kind of quirky and fun, and just doesn't take himself too seriously, and just has a really good time up there. And he does a cover of No Myth by Michael Penn, which is competitive with the original. So it's good. So anyway, there you go, Matt the
Electrician. He's on YouTube. You can buy his album.
Yeah.
And thank you, Alex Lindsay. You're on officehours.global every damn morning. My inspiration.
And some evenings.
And some evenings.
We now have extra hours, which is Monday nights, where we all sit around and just kind of talk.
See, this is my inspiration, though. This is kind of what I want to do with Club Twit. So, who is Cascadeur? He was on today.
It is a character animation tool. So today we were talking about character animation. Yesterday we were talking about Claude 3.5.
Oh yes.
Tomorrow we're talking about miking instruments and drones on Thursday and all kinds of stuff. So it's always every day. It's different. We have an NDI super panel on Friday, which is if you have questions about NDI, we have like many of the world experts coming on to talk about NDI.
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
Very geeky.
I will go back and watch the ATEM show from last Thursday, since that's what
we're doing those relatively often because there's so many of us that have ATEMs and they're popular shows, and there's so much to them. These little switchers are really powerful, so we cover them pretty often.
I got the Mini Extreme, and there's so many buttons I don't know what to do with it. So
you don't need most of them. I'll tell you right now that most of those buttons I've never. I've never touched. Like I would say 80% of the buttons.
But
I've
you
never
know me, I'm
used.
gonna push them all.
Yeah, the macro buttons are important. The key buttons are important. The macros you can do stuff with. Now, have you already? And I know I've already done a pick, but once you have an Extreme, you need a Mix Effect Pro. We've talked about it in the past, but that's this iPad software that makes everything.
You mentioned that before. Yes,
it's like once you buy if you have an ATEM Mini, you may not need it, but once you get an ATEM Extreme, it's kind of like the $50 thing that comes with it.
Oh no, I will
put
definitely
on your iPad, and it's great. It's really
and
great.
we bought, which somebody recommended, a really cute little 3D printed stand for, which I'll make my pick one of these days. It's the PK1 Extreme, and it's really it holds it.
Yeah, Aaron Parecki. Aaron
Yeah.
Parecki does those.
Yeah.
He's great.
And it's got shoes, so I'm gonna mount a little monitor on it so I can see what I'm doing.
Yep.
It's
yeah,
nice.
Aaron has been doing that. He's been doing those builds now almost since they came out. He's
Yeah, I
really
can tell
doing
it's
that.
3D printed because you can see, but it's very solid, very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Alex Lindsay. And of course, don't forget graymatter.show, which is the Michael Krasny interview show that Alex produces. You got lots of good people on that as well. So
He's a master.
yeah, Krasny's great.
Yeah.
Andy Anako, is GBH in your future?
Yes, a week from Thursday, 1:10 in the afternoon. Go to wgbhnews.org to listen to it live or later.
Very nice. Thank you ever so. And
Thank you for giving me a place to
hang out of a Tuesday morning. Yeah.
exactly to get rid of like the big steel sheets being
pile
hammered
drivers.
into the
Yes,
ground by pile
yes.
drivers. That's
And
I might
Micah,
sleep here.
thank you so much. Really appreciate your third show of the day. Very nice to have
Good
you.
to be
He
here.
hosts of iOS Today at twit.tv/iOS with Rosemary Orchard. And of course, joins me every Saturday for Ask the Tech Guys and Tech News Weekly on Thursdays. And
Indeed.
He's always a very welcome presence. Thank you. And we're going to see a lot more of you, Micah, because you're the one I'm going to be calling at 3 a.m. saying, hey, I'm up. You want to do a stream, man? Let's do a stream.
CrowdStrike number 2 is happening.
It's happening. We got to all get on. We got to all get on and talk about it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We do MacBreak Weekly Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. You can, as I mentioned, now watch us live everywhere. YouTube.com/twit/live, Twitch.tv/twit, LinkedIn, Facebook, X.com, Kick. I probably have. It's like everywhere, and that's one of the new things we're doing thanks to our Club Twit members. Twit.tv/clubtwit. If you're not yet a member, we're also, of course, in the Discord, and we'll be doing lots more ad hoc streams in there in the days and weeks to come. So join the club. We'd love to have you. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show with ads or without, available at twit.tv/mbw. There's video on YouTube that has all the ads and more. And there's also, of course, the subscription route, which I would recommend. It's free, despite the name. It sounds like you have to pay for it, but you don't. Just follow us in your favorite podcast client. And you'll get it automatically every Tuesday right after we finish the show, so you can listen at your leisure. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Now, I'm sad to say, as I have been saying for nearly 20 years, you got to get back to work because break time is over. See you next week. Bye-bye.